Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support the show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia.
Greetings and salutations, and we are not live, but welcome to Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast. This is episode number 253, and we are back here in the room. Things are a little different right now. Things are a little different, but we got someone to hold me down right now. Hoeg Law, Virtual Legality. How are we doing, sir?
I am doing okay. I don't like to have the job of holding you down, though. I want to lift you up.
I appreciate it. I need some lifting up, man. They mad with me, Hoeg. They mad with me.
I'm excited. I don't know the last time we did a one-on-one together.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I'm trying to think. I think the last time, not a one-on-one. It's been a long time for that. Yeah, that's actually been a long. You're right, because I think the last couple of times, I remember we did the Mass Effect. The very way back as far as the trilogies and stuff like that. We did a Final Fantasy VII remake spoiler cast right around Intergrade. I believe Intergrade you were on. I had you on that one. That's how long it's been. I think probably since a one-on-one. But normally it's like usually we're both like the third or part of a group and stuff like that. So we don't get this iteration of LSM, man. But how you been, man? Otherwise. I'm
good. I'm excited. I love talking about video games. This is going to be fun.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'll see the elephant in the room. Obviously, said my co-host, my fellow Duke, Mr. Batty Plays Some Love. He is going through a little health is wealth right now. You know, he's not feeling well. So, you know, we both agreed, hey, take what time you need. You know what I mean? We'll give him the time to heal and send some love, some nice messages to him. Don't get me wrong. He's okay for the most part, but he was definitely a little under the weather. So we both made the call that it's probably the right thing. So you got to deal with Cog hosted and Hoeg in here. You know what I mean?
It's a downgrade. It's no doubt, folks, but I'm happy to be here.
We will have some fun. So let's pay the bills. So obviously early access for the show goes live on Thursday over on patreon.com/laststandmedia. It hits free feeds like Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, and plenty more on Sunday. Furthermore, you can watch the video version on Last Stand Media's YouTube channel. But we're going to get right into it, man. We got to start off actually since we're talking about health. Let's talk about some health as well, man. And this one comes in from Kenneth Kopnick. Howdy, Duke boys. Figured I'd drop a potential health is wealth update. My wife and I started hitting the gym together around 16 months ago. It's just in our daily routine and something fun for us to do together. It's been invaluable for mentally dealing with tribulations and loss too. I'm 38 and 3 weeks ago, I did my first chin up in my life. Games are slow, but it takes time to overcome 36 years of neglect. Thanks for shining a light on health every week. Have a Sydney Sweetie in a sheer dress kind of day. So shout out to you, Kenneth, man. I love hearing this kind of stuff and just getting back out there. That's what is most important thing. And I love that you're doing it together. But any thoughts for Kenneth and the wife and anything?
I think it's great. I think it's so good to have something that you and your spouse are doing together, especially on a regular basis. Like if it's on the calendar, if it's something that's set up, that's just a really good place and time to connect with someone. And yeah, I'm entirely in favor of this whole health is wealth mantra, obviously. Having gone through my own issues and been working to, as folks can probably tell, lose some of my own weight as one of the things that helped get me in the hospital back in the day, although the doctors won't say that precisely. We know it's a factor, and so I've been trying to work on that for a while, as well as other things like sleep aids and whatnot, because apparently that also contributes to very bad health things. So I am entirely in favor of everybody like this, and I feel like these kinds of messages are so important to get out there.
Absolutely. Well said, brother. You know, I totally agree. And I love that we're able to talk about it in the realm of the Dukes in our community because, you know, it's important. It's important. We game, we're pretty much stationary all this time. And
there's a lot of sitting.
Yes, a lot of sitting, a lot of podcasting, right? So it really helps that I always use that mantra, like I try to earn the right to game, you know, it kind of put myself out there like that. So yeah, salute to the realm of the Dukes for putting it in. But we got to talk about a hot one now. Oh, you missed out. You missed out on this one. This is the most recurring topic from last week because the Remake Dukes were not happy with Cog. So let's get it, man. Shout out to Not John Cena. Hybrid Dukes. Before I begin, I just want to shout you guys out. Early on Define the Duke, you both agreed on almost everything. These days, you offer very differing perspectives, especially when it comes to Xbox, and it is much appreciated. That said, this one's mainly for Cog. Sarah Bond's claim that exclusives are antiquated feels incredibly disingenuous because she's only saying that due to the position Xbox put itself in. It's a nuanced topic and makes the statement not entirely true. There are massive multi-platform games like GTA, Minecraft, Roblox, and Fortnite that dominate charts all the time, but every time Sony and Nintendo drops a major exclusive, these games chart too. No one's saying exclusive games always stay at the top forever, but when they launch, they do move the charts and drive the conversation for months. There's clearly been room for both. Your multi-platform games that drive engagement and your exclusives that define your platform. For example, The Outer Worlds 2 being multi-plat isn't pulling wild numbers judged by Steam data, while Call of Duty obviously does. On the flip side, God of War was exclusive and it still did huge numbers. So the exclusives are antiquated narrative doesn't hold up. Let's not act like exclusives when of quality and marketed appropriately don't charge. Off the top, he's got God of War, he's got Spider-Man, Last of Us 2, Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon Forbidden West, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Tears of the Kingdom, Super Mario Brothers Wonder, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Animal Crossing, New Horizons. He's coming with a lot of data. All these were console exclusives and dominated charts for months, some for years. That completely disproves the idea that exclusivity doesn't move hardware or engagement. If we're talking data, we have to look at all of it. The numbers clearly show that since Xbox pivoted away from focus on console exclusives, console sales have suffered tremendously. Their own quarterly earnings reflect this. Hardware revenue and console sales have seen sharp declines. Services like Game Pass's digital revenue has gone up, but those could still be up even with strong exclusives. Sony and Nintendo service numbers thrive alongside exclusives, not in place of them. The reality is Xbox hasn't had a Game of the Year title since the 360 era. Forza Horizon 5 came close and arguably got snubbed, but the deeper problem was the lack of consistent, high-quality output. Xbox hasn't put in the work to raise the bar or nurture the internal culture of excellence the way Sony and Nintendo have, at least in the past. So now calling exclusives negative just feels like deflection from the real issue, not the concept of exclusives, but the lackluster games, misconsistency, and declining hardware momentum that came after they abandoned what used to make Xbox special. Anyways, I look forward to your rebuttal. As always, thanks for the engaging and entertaining podcast. Salute to you, Josh, for being respectful, because I like a respectful debate.
Yeah.
Okay, this was a hot one. I will jump on this one, Ho, because I don't know if you saw the statement before I start from Sarah Bond in reference to the whole exclusive antiquated. I don't know if you caught that quote or not.
I did. I've seen a lot of Xbox messaging out there on these kinds of topics, certainly.
Exactly. So look, let's get it. And I want to shout him out because, again, he had a lot of good points. And look, for the most part, I'm in alignment with the majority of these points. I think, what I do agree is that, exclusives, I love them. I come from them. That's what the industry I'm used to was kind of based upon, right?
Sure.
And, you get the exclusive and you get your local storefront and all that kind of stuff, and I do agree that the reason why Sarah Bond or Xbox leadership currently for saying this kind of stuff is because they are pivoting from a console strategy that did not work out for them. They, in my opinion, are looking to be a third-party publisher. So I agree with that. My pushback comes from the idea that, okay, the statement regarding exclusives is completely untrue. Right. And you could basically what I'm trying to say, Hogan, is you could disagree with the wording of being antiquated based on their position. I think that's a fair criticism. Right. But I think that the idea of exclusives dominating sales and stuff like that, I think that part, there's some truth to what she says. So look, let's get the elephant in the room. Nintendo is the huge outlier here. Right.
Yep.
They just, 10 million consoles sold, 2 out of 3 of their sales are from their first party. I get it. What I'm saying is Nintendo doesn't make up the entire industry, right? So you look at PlayStation, right, whose third party sales actually dominate their first party sales, Xbox and then PC, right? So the majority of those sales come from third parties. So that's the part I'm trying to extrapolate where I'm like, okay, I get what they are saying. What they're saying is not just all corporate speak and stuff like that. Now, they may be saying a lot of this because they have pivoted. I get that. So I think there's truth there. Now, the other thing I wanted to kind of establish as far as like, what we consider critically acclaimed and Metacritic and what actually sells the most year to date, as far as like the last 5 years, right? And those are the kind of data points I'm pulling from, as well as, I look at developers. I look at from the standpoint of, you speak to developers and like, hey, they want their games everywhere. You look at, for example, like the Helldiver situation or just in general live service and things of that nature. So it's more of that, and then obviously we talked about multi-platform. We talk about free to play. We talk about all these things that's kind of demanding the time. So look, the last thing I'll say is this. Yes, Xbox is making this decision because they are pivoting. But part of this decision is that they are looking at how people play and their habits. And a lot of people are married to their ecosystem. They are not leaving. So their strategy, again, it's definitely a pivot because of failed console success, right? But their strategy is, hey, let's go to where they are. So that's what it is. I just wanted to be fair, as far as that statement. Again, integrated, you could attack her for using that verbiage. Fair. I won't fight you on that. You know what I'm saying? But as far as saying exclusives dominate the industry and so, that's the part I just wanted to give some nuance. But look, I've been talking a lot. I want to get your feedback on this whole. And look, if you want to push back, or disagree, please, all means.
Should I throw hands here? No.
Yeah, this is what I had my moment, man. They were like, Cog, we are furious with you.
It does happen. Look, you get out here, you talk about things on the internet. Sometimes the people, they get upset. Obviously, I know that as well as you do. I will say this, right? My training is in corporate speak. This is what I do for a living. And I do think that, as you rightly said, there are ways that these executives talk about things that sound wrong on a factual basis. And that is totally a justified kind of concern for people to have. But when Microsoft Gaming goes out there and says something like exclusives are antiquated, in whatever form or fashion they deliver that message, it's not for the truth of the underlying facts that they are trying to convey. They are trying to say that's the past and we're the future. Why are they saying that? Because the past didn't work for them. As you rightly said, Cog, they lost the console war. The folks that hate Xbox can be celebrating in the streets, but Xbox isn't just going to go away. They're going to say, we're going to do something different. And this is what a big corporation does. They say, all right, we lost that game, but you know what? That game didn't matter. We're going to play a new game. And that's the game that matters. That's the future, not the past. And we can talk about whether they're right or wrong. I think there are in this comment, and I agree with you, Cog, that this was very well presented and very respectful. And I love to have conversations on those terms. I think there are a couple of stolen rhetorical bases here, right? When you use the chart of successful one-cell video games as against things that have monthly active users and constant microtransactions like Roblox and Fortnite and everything else that we see at the top of the revenue generation charts, you've already kind of collapsed your data selection down to what you are trying to say matters. But you've already eliminated the things that you say don't matter, so we can't compare those in an even way. There's other things that happen here in this comment, like Outer Worlds 2 isn't selling because of the Steam numbers. I think in particular, the existence of Game Pass and Game Pass releases really hurts the ability of just using the Steam transparency to understand what is succeeding. And Microsoft's getting killed by that in a marketing kind of way. They don't care about that as much, I don't think, because they really care about the bodies in the door, the Game Pass sales in the door, whatever you want to frame it as. But there are these little things in this conversation that even as they're trying to be made, you can note are stealing that base and saying, okay, exclusives, this what I've presented here says a message completely disproves the idea that exclusivity doesn't move hardware or engagement. So the engagement, maybe that might be true. Saying that exclusives sell moves hardware isn't a straight line, right? So yes, they have God of War Ragnarok, they have Spider-Man 2 on PlayStation, Xbox has Indiana Jones and has various things that they ultimately move over to PlayStation, but you can't connect the sales of the platform directly to just the existence of exclusives. One of the reasons Sony won is because they have the biggest breadth of availability of games and they're exclusive. So it's kind of a combo platter there there's a lot of things that are in this message that I can understand saying, I want to react to Microsoft making this what I view as ridiculous comment about exclusives being gone and dead. But I don't think some of the extrapolations that happen from what was presented in this comment actually hold forth, if we examine them at the detail level that this commenter would call us to examine them at.
Yeah. No, well said, well said. And I think, like I said, I want to be respectful, even though a lot were not respectful to me, in reference to, I really appreciate, I want to stress this again, I really appreciate critically acclaimed game. I love that. Games that, that I feel are transformative, that rate high, and they should get a lot of light. And that, again, it adds that flavor. It brings you to the platform. You're like, wow, this is a really cool game. It's exclusive to this ecosystem, and you go to it. But at the same time, I think the harsh reality sometimes that gamers don't want to face is that, a lot of the games that, like, for example, like, I'm going to use Call of Duty. Like, there's some games that they still have a hardcore gamer sensibility. So hardcore gamers be like, I don't care about that, right? But when you look at, like I said, you look at the charts, you look at year to date, I'm looking at the top 20 for the last 2 years. It's like Call of Duty, EA Sports, College.
Yeah, we're not spending a lot of time talking about FIFA here, but it's making money.
Exactly. That's all. These are the biggest titles. They drive the most engagement, and they're multi-platform. And that's the thing I'm just trying to get across to my gaming brothers and sisters. Like, look, I get it. I still love the idea of exclusives. I'm not saying they actually are antiquated, but you got to look at what's driving the industry. And that's all. I just wanted to give nuance to that situation and stuff like that. So even though some of y'all was mad disrespectful to me, it's all good. All I just say is present your arguments with respect, just like, my man Cena here, and I'm all good.
Yeah.
I'm always good about having that.
Well, and I think we can concede the initial ground, which is they are saying this because they've lost that fight. Like, that is the existence of this comment.
Thank you.
Is because they are saying that fight didn't matter. We're doing something else now.
Well, and that's the part I agree with the realm. I'm like, they saying this because they did their thing didn't work, and now they try to reinvent themselves 100%. And that's the part I think I think I probably wasn't as clear last week in defense of the realm. So it is what it is. But I love y'all. This is a fun one. So let's get into the next topic. All right, this one comes from Rich. Xbox hybrid long-term prospects. How does Microsoft expect to remain relevant in the PC space when PCs have always described as obsolete upon purchase? For Rich, that's been the best part of console gaming, where the console lasts for 4 to 7 years. He's built a new high-end PC at the end of last year, and now he says it's already being surpassed. So if the new hybrid console is released in 2026 or 2027, more powerful options from other PC makers will likely be available within 1 to 2 years, which might be even cheaper. The market Microsoft is attempting to enter would pretty much require them to make a new version every year to keep up, like iPhones and tablets. Do you think Microsoft will do this, or will it be up to third-party manufacturers like Asus to make newer versions after the first year? Is the console Microsoft is making just an off-ramp that, like Colin has suggested, a limited time offering to migrate their most faithful customers to PC? If this is the case, could they be looking at just making Xbox PC OS that could be sold to gamers not looking for a work PC experience? Removing the bloat to prevent the future SteamOS from gutting the Windows user base for gamers is necessary. Hope to hear your thoughts on this, as I feel the move to PC space is going to be far more difficult than Microsoft expects. So what do you think about this, Rich, as far as this hybrid future and obviously the rumors, a legend, premium device, multiple operating systems, and then his, idea about console gaming and PC gaming, and them be operating in this space?
Well, I think this is honestly the most fascinating topic that we have in games right now. Like, what does the Microsoft Xbox look like? What does it do? Is it, as rumors suggest, even more of a hybridized PC than they are right now? And people should understand that the series and the PlayStations that exist right now are essentially PCs already, with very sophisticated operating systems designed just to play games. So is Microsoft going to make something different for their operating system that can allow Steam and these other game storefronts to operate? And if that works, is that a new product line for them outside of Xbox and consoles, but actually an operating system that they can sell just like they sell Windows for a different use case for your laptops and what have you? So I suspect Microsoft is evaluating all those things behind the scenes, because the real trick here for the hybrid Xbox is making it as convenient for console goers as the existing Xbox products are, right? People don't love Xboxes or PlayStations or consoles because they are lesser PCs. They like them because of how convenient it is to hit your controller, turn it on, and be able to click the button that starts your video game and off you go. So Xbox has an issue with making that still seem as streamlined and fun for especially more casual gamers, but even hardcore gamers that want to play on console primarily, sitting on their comfortable couch and playing on their TV. So I think this is a question of what Microsoft wants to do with their hardware line more than it is with their operating system line. And I can't tell you what they're looking at behind the scenes. I think there is a version of this. I'm sure Microsoft would love to sell you a new Xbox every year, call it the new Xbox and be as confusing as the new iPhone and just have that fun. Open up Xbox stores so they can have Xbox Genius Bar type people tell you exactly what Xbox you need to buy this year. But I don't know that they're going to do that. I don't think that they have to do that necessarily. When they're entering the PC space, I think it is to add that breadth of offerings of software that they aren't getting currently with their third-party support in the Xbox ecosystem. I don't think it's just to sell you on the existence of PC space gaming. So I don't think they have to, if they don't want to, just do upgrades every year. I think they can have the 7-year cycle, the 9-year cycle, whatever it is now in 2025 and beyond. But you would understand that your Xbox Series PC, whatever it is called, is not going to be the top of the line for more than a beat on the PC side, but still understanding that PC developers are always dealing with what we would consider to be obsolete hardware as they release games. So it's not like the Xbox wouldn't be able to play games for a good number of years, even when they're not the top of the line. So it's really up to what their business strategy would be. I don't have a ton of faith in Microsoft's business offices right now, just because they seem to change their minds so often. And I always view that as a difficult organization to kind of get behind and say, yes, they know what they're doing. They've got their eyes on the prize. They're analyzing this. They're going to move forward. It's going to be great. So I think whatever they decide today might be different tomorrow. And that tends to be the kind of strategy or lack thereof that winds up in car crashes, winds up doing poorly in the long run. My hope is that that's not the case. I still strongly believe that it is useful to have Microsoft as a successful competitor in the gaming field. And I hope that they find a way for this to work for them. But anytime you have these kinds of huge pivots, they're trying to essentially build a new market. This commenter says entering the PC market. It's really best to think of it as entering it into a hybrid market. They aren't going to try to win PC. You're always going to be able to get a fancier robot laptop that's going to have hologram laser beams and everything else. And the Xbox is not going to do that. It's going to be more expensive. I think we see the rumors saying that they're going to be aiming for the boutique high-end market. I think that's the right call. But it's never going to be, I'm spending $5,000 on a laptop with a cooling system and everything else. It's not going to be that. That doesn't exist as a market to put things under your TV. So it's really, really interesting. But for every reason why it's interesting, it's the same reason I can't tell you with any kind of probability what it's going to look like tomorrow, let alone in 5 years.
Yeah, well said, Hug. I'm with you. I mean, this is uncharted territory, and like for me, obviously as a person that has followed them for a while, and I'm so used to the traditional console space. That's where my heart is. I just want, the Rum and the Dukes always tease me because I use this term that the PC master race guys get a little bad. I'm like, I don't want to do a lot of tweaking and twerking when it comes to playing my video games. Right?
No, that's exactly me.
Right. And the joke is, because I was able to review the ROG Ally, I actually purchased mine. But like, there's a lot of tweaking and twerking with that device from an operating systems perspective where Windows is getting in the way. So there's a part of me that's like, okay, I'm going to give them the most feedback now because the console guy doesn't want to deal with any obstructions to his experience, even if it's the most minute thing, because it's almost like that death of a thousand cuts thing. You keep having a little problems with the UI, you can't get to the game, or a universal access control prompt comes up, and all these things add up, right? So my goal is, hey, these are the learnings, and I do think there's a part of it where the ROG Ally X is kind of like a beta test for them prior to this hybrid console future. Now, obviously, we did get the reports from Windows Central stating, that their new console will be just like a traditional console, and that basically the console gamers could choose not to even see a Windows-like experience. And I think from a hypervisor standpoint, from a UI standpoint, that is critical. They need to, one, be able to have their entire Xbox library, right? Unlike the ROG Ally X, which like, oh, it's got to be Play Anywhere or you can stream it. Or no, we want the dedicated console boot where you have my digital library that goes back from 360 games and so on and so forth. So that's the first thing. I think I do agree with Colin's point as far as the off-ramp. My personal opinion is because they have pivoted so aggressively, they kind of want out of the hardware business. At least their actions, we'll get into that later, in my opinion. To me, it's just like, okay, we'll do it, but there's going to be a premium product, you know what I'm saying? And this is an experiment for them, in my opinion. You know, so you may pay that premium price, whether it be $1,000 or more, right?
I think in my head, I've got it at $1,500 or more at this point.
Yeah, King is with you. He's like 1,500, 100%. Like, and it could very well, whatever this Xbox Magnus, according to the leaks and stuff like that, where it's a very high performant, high fidelity kind of device, and maybe they offer, you know, a Series S version of this with less memory to try to, I would say competitive, because I don't feel they try to compete with PlayStation and Nintendo directly anymore. I just think that, ultimately what I'm trying to say is, I think that in a perfect world, they would like to be the biggest publisher in gaming, who just happens to have this boutique / niche device. Now, as far as Rich's question, you know, I mean, like, I get it. There's a lot of challenges here. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, the Windows portion, right? And I know they're making strides, and because it's going to have multiple stuff. You're going to be able to access Steam. You're going to be able to access all these things. And I just want to see how much resistance or any type of issues there for a power user who goes back and forth. I'm very curious about that part. But look, you know, as an old OG that's been around for a while, you know, I would just say I'm very happy that the platform that I prefer at least is making a console. I come from the era where it's like I woke up one day and Dreamcast said they're not making any consoles anymore. I woke up one day, you know, I liked TurboGrafx 16. They're not making any consoles.
I love my 3DO. It was gone.
Think about it. We came from the OEM where they were making a Gold Star 3DO. They had the Panasonic base one, but we come from the era. So again, this is uncharted territory. I will say this: anyone could pull it off. Maybe it's Microsoft, but we got to see. The results are not out there. But yeah, we come from the era, and that's all I try to tell people who are so, I guess, angry with what they're doing. It's like, look, the moment you could still log in and you have access to your life, be happy. I didn't have that with 3DO. At Trip Hawkins, it was all over.
No, it's the truth. And I think I've been on this show, if not others, saying this, that we've gotten used to this tripolar setup, but this was an equilibrium point that didn't exist for the early years of video gaming at all. And so it doesn't have to exist exactly this way. I think it is a good thing that Microsoft is still at least making the noises that they want to be invested in gaming. And I think that they will be. They've spent enough money on it, and they are seeing how difficult it is for the other tech companies, with Amazon and Google having their issues. So I think Microsoft wants to keep its foothold. I agree with you, Cog, that I don't think they're too terribly invested in the overall success metrics of the box under the TV itself. But I do think their bean counters are going to be mentioning to them as part of this whole enterprise that those consoles are still the best, highest attachment rate for the Game Pass product. And they want to have that on TVs. They want to have that on phones and everything else. But right now, having a console solution under the TV is still the best way to move Game Passes. And so I think they're going to keep up with that for as long as that keeps being true. Is that true more than 2 minutes into tomorrow? I don't know. They don't either. They're guessing just like everybody else. I tell this to everybody, but companies are just people. Microsoft, one of the biggest companies in the world, still just people. We haven't gotten around that kind of input yet. So Xbox is trying to make the best decisions they can. I've already said as part of this show, I have my doubts about some of those things, but it's primarily on the notion of consistency. And these kinds of things, these pivots, these buildings of new markets take a lot of intestinal fortitude to go and see through. It's not going to work instantaneously. You're not going to just be the most popular thing in the history of mankind and just be able to show your bosses how much money you're making hand over fist in moment one. So the institution actually has to have some patience. And I'm a little concerned about that, but I'm not concerned about what I'm hearing with the rumors. I think the boutique high end is exactly where they're going to belong here. They seed the low end to Nintendo. I love my Switch 2. I love it to death. They cede the mass market to PlayStation, which is going to be a bitter pill to swallow. They don't love that. But I do think there is a space for, all right, you guys, if you've got money, if you're rich, if you love gaming, why not give that money to us? And I think that is going to exist. I hope that they succeed on it. I think everybody benefits from them succeeding on it. I know this is an uncomfortable position for fans of the Xbox brand to be in. And I don't love going out here on shows like this and telling you that this is an acknowledgement, as it has been for some months now, that they lost. They lost the console war. It's, hey, it is what it is. The good corporations say, all right, that's a loss. We were never really interested in winning that fight anyway. We're interested in this other fight over here. And that's hard for the kind of brand fans that are out there.
Interesting.
But I don't recommend being a fan of a corporate brand to anyone, to any brand, by the way. This isn't limited to Microsoft or Xbox. But if you find yourself in that situation, do try to not get emotionally attached to the corporation or the brand if you can't avoid it. We're all human beings. We all love things irrationally from time to time. But this is going to be a weird sea change kind of moment for Xbox. And it's going to feel uncomfortable for you. It's uncomfortable for them. I can't speak with specificity about what these meetings look like, or the Zoom calls, or the boardroom offices meetings. But I can tell you that anytime you have these kinds of situations, there's a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth, even in the executive rooms.
No, well said. Well said. I love what you said in reference to fandom and stuff like that, because it's true. In respect of, anybody who is a fan of a brand, and, I almost look at on some level like a sports team, in the sense of the GM and ownership are not making decisions, that the 49ers and the Lions are not making decisions that we are happy with, and they continue to
They stood pat at the trade deadline. What are we doing here?
What are we doing, man? I'm like, we need a pass rush. But look, the price was too high. Did I agree with it? No, I felt they should have went out there, but there's a part of me that understood, okay, they didn't want to overpay for a rental, so to speak, kind of thing. These are decisions corporations, like you said, gnash their teeth about what they're going to do. And I think ultimately, here's the thing. Yes, were corporations responsible at one point for promoting the console war and having different messages that say they were going after exclusives? Absolutely. But at some point, I guess I look at it, when a corporation or something that you love continues to do things that you don't agree with, you have a decision to make, right? You either say, okay, I still like the ecosystem. I'll be here. We'll see what happens. Or you say, you know what? I don't like what they're doing. They're pushing me to PlayStation. They're pushing me to Nintendo. They're pushing me to PC. And I think part of it now is the admission that, like you said, they've lost the console war. So it's like, okay, go over there. We'll bring the games to you at some point. Hopefully you'll buy them. Maybe we get 70% of the revenue over there, whatever. And I think it's the uncomfortable decision that they have conceded, and people now have to make a decision. The last part I'll say, just that emotionally, try not to let that thing dominate, because this thing dominates your life in the sense of this is a hobby, and we should not be disrespectful to each other or going so crazy at each other over these things, because at the end of the day, like I said, it's video games, people, and nothing should consume you to that point. Trust me, I was younger. I understand the pain. You know what I'm saying? But I was just trying to calm my brethren down, because I'm like, they are going at each other. They're just so rabid. And I'm noticing, and I'm like, this is your first time. I'm singing. I've experienced all this already. And I'm just trying to help you through the dark times as a refugee.
Yeah, no, and it's totally okay to have disappointment. And I think if we're being honest, Microsoft was one of the major players that helped foment this kind of emotional bond to the brand. That was part of their marketing strategy. 100%. So if you find yourself caught up in that wake, I am sympathetic and I understand. Yes. But now they're moving forward. They're telling you they didn't even want to win the console war. You can tell them that they're idiots. That's fine. But the future is going to look different. That is just the case.
100%. So we will move on. So this was interesting. Shout out to the homie Jeff Caceres, Roman and Dukes, also Lords of Gaming.net, the homie. Shout out. He goes, "What's up, Dukes?" He said, "The time has come. After November 5th, I will now be a Game Pass Premium member. So no more Game Pass Ultimate for Jeff."
That's the middle, right?
That's the middle, yeah. He said, "I have to say, it's bittersweet. I will miss day one games for sure. But at the same time, I don't mind buying games like Outer Worlds 2, Ball Pit, and Stalker 2. I have a huge backlog. And for the past few years, I've stopped buying games day one because so many of them release broken. I'm tired of being a beta boy. That's an ILP term. Now that Game Pass will no longer give me day one games, I can focus on all of my own games and only buy if I am truly interested in what I see, which means that I will probably find it on sale and the game will most likely be complete by then. End of an era for me. Rest in peace, Xbox. Love you. Keep it up. So, what are we doing, man? Game Pass Ultimate. I think last time I did speak to you, Game Pass, or maybe we talked briefly about the Game Pass and price hikes and stuff like that. But where you at with the whole Ultimate now that the price has gone up? And obviously Jeff he's going down in premium. Some people have canceled outright. So where do you stand with this whole thing?
At first, I don't blame anybody for canceling or reducing their subscription. I don't blame anybody at all for that. I think right now I've let it ride. It really just hasn't been a priority for my bill culling in 2025 as of yet. But I might go down a tier because I think, as this commenter says, the real issue in gaming right now is the developers have gotten really good at creating satisfying experiences. We can complain about day one and patches and all sorts of stuff, but in my opinion, 2025 is one of the strongest years in video games. Seemingly every minute, there's a new thing that really entrances and enthralls me. And I look at the next week of releases and say, yeah, I would love to play those 3 games, but I've also got these last 7 that I'm currently playing, right? I've got Dragon Quests, I've got Kingdom Comes, I've got Outer Worlds, I've got just so many things that are 30, 40, 50, 60 hours. And I'm not even bringing up Ubisoft games, right, which are notorious for being 100-hour experiences. So we've got tons of things to play. I'm deeply, deeply invested in Ball Pit. So we've got indies that are just killing it out there. And so I think, if I'm being honest, I probably don't need day one Microsoft exclusives in my Game Pass subscription. I still like it because I think actually Microsoft, one of my favorite things that they have done, in my opinion, very correctly over the last few years is their curation team on Game Pass. They are just finding indies, and there are so many indies, guys, that release every freaking day. If you're looking at the eShop or Steam or Xbox or PlayStation, you're just seeing just hundreds of things to spend your time on, and nobody has that time. So one of the most effective things that Game Pass does for me right now is these are the 6 indies that we thought were worthy of a contract. And they are really good at finding special projects. They don't always turn out to be fantastic world-beating type indie games, but they almost always have something really interesting speaking for them. And so they did this year Blueprints, they did Expedition 33,
yes.
They did Ball Pit. They're just picking out things that wind up being really successful with the mass market, but also just really successful as products. And so I do think Game Pass is useful for that. I think that still comes through on the premium membership tier. So I might reduce it in the future. Right now, I've let it ride. And I think I just got the alert that my price goes up, I think, now.
Yeah, it's coming up soon. No, well said, well said. Shout out to Jeff in reference to, anyone who says, look, man, I don't play their first parties like that. I can't justify that price increase. I totally understand that, empathetic to that. For me, I can only speak for myself. I can only speak for my current game usage and how I look. And you made some good points, because I was looking at, I got my little spreadsheet as far as like what I'm playing on the platform. And as far as from obviously the first party standpoint, and then obviously the Game Pass, which I consider, that's their ecosystem. So for me, it was already 3 game of the year contenders for me. It was Hollow Knight Silksong, Expedition 33.
I didn't even mention Silksong.
Bro, that was Game Pass, right? And Blueprints, right? So then the top of the year, I had Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. I was in heaven. The year the Ninja came out, obviously Ninja Gaiden 4. The Altars, I just thought was amazing. I absolutely loved it. I love these AA, these indies that are really punching above their weight. So I had that. I had Towerboard, Atomfall, Revenge of the Savage Planet for me. As an 80s I did like that RoboCop Rogue City.
Oh, I loved RoboCop.
Yeah, it was that. Then we got Metaphor, Free Fantasio joined the series that I thought was a game of the year contender last year that it finally joined. Ball Pit, Power Wash 2, Persona 4 Golden. As a turn-based guy, Aliens, Fireteam Elite, 33 Immortals. Again, so the list goes on for me as far as these are games. One, from a discoverability standpoint, I would have not known about A lot of them, if they weren't curated as such. And then a lot of them also like huge, big titles like a Warhammer, for Space Marines and stuff like that. So for me, it still serves its purpose because if I did the math, if I bought all those games, it definitely would equate it past the, $300 or $320, whatever it works out for the subscription on a yearly basis. But I understand, look, this is not an inexpensive hobby, you know what I'm saying? And you have to make a personal decision kind of thing. So for me right now, it still makes sense, kind of thing. But yeah, for anybody else that says, hey, I'm good on that, I'll just buy the games. I think there's a part, I'll be honest with you, I think there's a part of them that they don't mind if you buy the games based on, their bet as far as Call of Duty. Because remember, they put Call of Duty only in the Ultimate tier and some of those things. And I think they realized the cannibalization of those sales. So that's just kind of where I'm at with that. But anything else from you on the Game Pass Ultimate thing?
No, I don't think so. I think that the price increase probably could have been dealt with a little bit more smoothly,
Yes.
both in messaging and in increment.
Yeah.
But
100%.
it is what it is. Microsoft is clearly changing strategies seemingly every minute.
Yeah.
So this is another one of them.
100%. All right, let's move on. This one's fun. I'm dying to get your opinion on this one. Destiny 2, Hoeg. Renegades expansion trailer reveals Star Wars inspired exotic weapons and gear. So this is the big expansion from Destiny Renegades, which is kind of all Star Wars inspired. So it looks like they had a big trailer. They showed some exotics. One called Uncivil Discourse, clearly inspired by Han Solo's DL-44 pistol. While they said the A499 heavy sniper rifles look like the Mandalorian's Ammen rifle. In addition, Bungie showed the modified B7 pistol, all or nothing pulse rifle, and compact sidearm and another SMG called the Fast Talker. But the one that everyone's going crazy on is this one called the Praxic Sword. So it's a kinetic-based weapon clearly inspired by the lightsaber from the Star Wars franchise. So you see the hunter coming around, doing the deflections and all this other stuff. And they said the heirloom is a crossbow-shaped weapon that fires high-power explosive bolts. Also appears to be based on Chewbacca's bolt caster. So yeah, this is a trailer. Obviously, Destiny the numbers have been a bit interesting as far as the player count. And this is kind of the last hurrah. So I wanted to get your opinion as far as as the cars make a lot of noise by me. I wanted to get your opinion as far as this discussion with them making Star Wars inspired content. There seems to be two camps. One camp that's like, look, man, this is Star Wars. This is kind of tasteless. You need to come with your own ideas. And the other camp like, yo, I like Star Wars. I'm interested. I want to check it out. It looked kind of cool, kind of thing. So I don't know if you got a chance to look at any of this stuff, but I'm just curious. As a person who used to play Destiny, what is your thoughts about this direction from Bungie?
I like lapsed Destiny player as a category. It's the truth. I think this matches up with how I feel about certain things like Magic the Gathering and even Fortnite, which is kind of the progenitor of this, of just taking all these IPs and putting them into your universe. I enjoyed a lot of Destiny back when they were doing campaigns and storylines that I could at least follow. And seasons kind of ruined that a little bit for me, as we've already talked about. I don't have the time to keep up with a full live service schedule in basically any game. So I wasn't able to follow a lot of the Destiny storyline with the way that they were upgrading it. But I have to not be hypocritical here. Certainly the existence of Star Wars in Destiny says, oh, I should pay attention to what they're doing with that. And I'm interested in it because I am a Star Wars fan. Although, to put that in context, as I said earlier, don't fall in love with brands. My own personal version of that is Star Wars. I felt a deep loss when I felt that Disney Star Wars was essentially leaving me behind after loving it my whole life before then. So I love Star Wars. I very much enjoyed Destiny. I have more than 1,000 hours in it, I think. But it's kind of hard for me to engage with Star Wars content in the same way that I used to. Either way, I don't love to see original properties of any kind just kind of become amalgamations of other properties. I think they lose their identity that way. My hope is that they've come up with some cool way to integrate Star Wars that keeps the Destiny flavor. With all of this, I don't mind lightsabers running around. I think every game could be benefited by having lightsabers running around. But I hope that the destiny of it all still stays in some form or fashion when Star Wars comes in, because I think too often Fortnite doesn't get a lot of credit for Save the World, but I thought that was a cool vibe they had with their very cartoonish zombies and building the forts and all these things. And I thought that I remember thinking at the time that when they got Thanos and the Marvel people into the Battle Royale, that was just really impressive lawyer work. That just really good job from the IP lawyers convincing Disney that they would keep track of their characters and everything would be great. And obviously from there, the Epic Games lawyer crew has gotten in all sorts of licenses. But I think as a result, Fortnite doesn't have, in my estimation, really any identity of its own other than pop culture amalgamation. And I would hate to see that happen to Destiny or basically anything else that people really like.
Well said. Yeah, it's a tough one for me, man. You know how much I love this franchise. And it's funny because I would love to I haven't got a chance to speak to your Bitcast co-host, Ty Guy Travis, who I know loves Star Wars and literally loves Destiny. And I know he would probably be rolling his eyes because he hates any form of collaboration like this. So he wants Destiny to kind of keep its identity. Look, I looked at the trailer, I'll be honest. At first, when I heard of the announcement, I'm like, I'm going to see what they're going to do. Is it going to be canon? And then I heard, no, it's just kind of inspired by Star Wars things and stuff like that. Look, let's not sugarcoat this. The Destiny player base is floundering badly. They have been bleeding players, and a lot of the situation comes down to, basically the grind being extremely difficult, not listening to feedback. Also, what you hear is that the fixes, it's very buggy now. Like, I guess because of all the layoffs, I'm going to attribute it to all the layoffs of the QA people that have gone, that there are things that just don't work. And generally, I'll pay attention to Ibanez, and like when the new content comes out, and then I'll wait like a day or two. And then they tell me, yeah, it's bugged, this is not working, or the progression is not going. And I'm like, I'm not joining until it's fixed. And that seems to have been consistent since that, the post-final shape kind of thing. And that's the thing that hurts me. So for me, I looked at the perfect conclusion of the story was Final Shape. It was their Avengers Endgame. I thought it was beautiful. The Excision mission, if you've been gone away, was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen them do. And it was over for me at that moment. Emotionally, I was like, this is a 10-year saga, and that's how you end it, right? So to me, it just seems like they've been forced to kind of still be on the treadmill. For whatever reason, they put all their eggs in Marathon, and we'll see how that goes. We're going to talk about other, extraction shooters in that space doing extremely well. But, I thought, I'll be honest, I did feel, in defense of you and Travis, I did feel the Star Wars collaboration was a bit of a desperate move. And, I saw the trailer, it looked cool. I'll admit, the little cabal looking like, the Star Stormtroopers or whatever they were doing. Look, I'll be there to experience just to see. But ultimately, I would have loved a Destiny 3 announcement, at least for them to pivot that way. But I don't know if that's in their cards. And I am worried about them. I'm sincerely worried about them and what PlayStation will do, considering, Marathon's future. It seems like a lot is tied up in that. I just felt, this is the last thing I'll say. I felt like you had the money maker with Destiny 2 when it was at its peak. And for whatever reason, their eyes got big, took their eyes off the ball, and then they wanted to do all this expansion. And I just don't think it's really worked out. And I would just wish that they would have kept a lot of resources to what their fans really want, which is like more Destiny content, but a Destiny 3 bigger engine, that kind of thing. So I'll be there till the wheels fall off, and we'll see how it works.
Yeah, I mean, for the record, I agree with you completely. Final Shape was the last time I played Destiny 2, and I thought that was a great ending. And they had the same problem that Marvel did, which is that everybody thought that was a great ending. And that was the right time to say, all right, Destiny 3 is going to be something slightly different and bigger and over here. And they didn't take that opportunity. They did this. And it's no real surprise to me from a narrative perspective that people are like, I've been satiated. I have gotten what I wanted out of this story. I don't really need to run around it anymore. And so, yeah, you go to Star Wars. I think Star Wars was a break glass in case of emergency kind of collaboration for a lot of folks. But I don't think it really is anymore. I think we saw with the lack of success from Ubisoft's Outlaws project, which was my game of the year. I love that game. But you could see the softness of the Star Wars brand kind of driving people to that game. You saw a lot more negativity from it being a Ubisoft game and following kind of more of a Ubisoft model than uplift from having Star Wars as a name attached to it. And I don't really blame people because I think Disney Star Wars has been as meandering and strategically kind of misplaced as the Microsoft that we've been talking about as part of this video. But because of that, I don't think slapping Star Wars collaboration on Destiny is going to be that kind of saving grace that I got to believe Bungie and Sony hope it is.
Yeah, well said. We'll see what happens. But this one, I got to bring back an old segment. We gotta, what do we do? Help us, Hoeg.
Oh, help us out, Hoeg. From the Easy Allies Day.
The Easy Allies days, man. That's when I first kind of came across the content. And this one's a hot one, man. I gotta get your feedback on this. So look, I'm going to be butchering a lot of verbiage and legal terminology, so please forgive me.
You won't be the first.
So shout out to the U.S. Patent Office, who makes a rare decision to order a re-examination of the previously awarded Nintendo patent. The X-Part re-examination appears to relate to two patents filed by Konami in 2002 and Nintendo itself in 2019. So yeah, they're re-examining these projects that protect patent and gameplay mechanic, wherein as an in-game character summons another sub-character to support it in battle in one of two battle modes. So basically, the shock decision does not necessarily mean the award will be revoked immediately, but does intimate that the USPTO director has concerns about this patent, which may well result in its eventual revocation. So last week, GamesIndustry.biz, they reported that Nintendo had been denied a patent application that would have allowed it to own the mechanic of capturing a character or creature in a game, such as that found in Pokemon games. But in the previous month, it has successfully secured a new patent in the US that protects a common gameplay mechanic wherein an in-game character can summon another sub-character to support it in battle. So yeah, I just wanted to get your feelings on this. This still seems to be ongoing, and you know, obviously the Nintendo versus Palworld pocket pair kind of thing. I've been lightly following it, but I don't know if you've been paying attention to it, Hoeg, but I would love to get your insight from a legal standpoint on all this.
Yeah, I think one of my last virtual legalities before I kind of took a small hiatus was about this particular topic, and one of the things that I said was that the USPTO, as well as other patent and trademark offices around the world, seems to be a little out of their depth with video games. And I think we need to take this back a step further for like how patents work, what they're supposed to protect, to understand these kinds of stories. But patents are inventions, right? That's the easiest way to think about things. Copyrights are expressions of ideas. So you think about the actual script of a movie or a video game, or you think about the content that is creative in nature in those things, but those aren't inventions. Those are things that were developed by artists. Patents are inventions, and video games are pieces of software that express those inventions. So you have copyright and patents kind of intermingling in a weird way. But what you are supposed to be able to do is tell the patent office that we have made something with our own ingenuity. It's new. And it's not an obvious progression from what existed before. That what the patent office protects, what patents protect, is that spark of innovation that some human somewhere brings to the table. And where you get into trouble on these things is that if it was a reasonable kind of evolution of what already existed in what the technical term we call prior art, things that were in the world before you, then you're not supposed to get protection for that. And that reasonable evolution is in the eyes of somebody that is essentially a player in the field. So if a video game developer would know, okay, we've got this concept of capturing things or having sub-characters run around and fight for us in the context of a turn-based Final Fantasy game, then it's really not a crazy new invention to have that put forth in the context of a 3D environment where you throw a ball out and the Pokemon pops out for you. But it is the duty of the person that is applying for the patent to go and declare what the prior art for that patent is. And then it's the duty of the patent office. We'll talk about the USPTO because we're in the United States, but it's every patent office where you go and apply for one of these things to say, okay, that's the prior art. We looked at the things. We think that you are different enough that you deserve a patent here. We're going to grant you a patent. In this particular circumstance, I believe it was Japan that denied one of Nintendo's applications here, which is super odd because that's the home field for Nintendo, right. And you expect to get better treatment essentially out of your own patent Patent and Trademark Office than the international ones. So what appears to happen here is that the U.S. grants this patent. It was suspect at the time that it was granted, insofar as anybody that looks at these things can say, okay, that appears to have all sorts of prior art problems. This appears to be an idea that already existed. It appears to be something that was a natural evolution of what already existed. I don't think you did your job right, USPTO, but ordinarily, that's the end of the story from the USPTO's perspective. Somebody has to go and get sued over an infringement of that patent and then uses a defense that it wasn't granted properly, that there was all this prior art, and you get into a litigation that way. Here, the USPTO in an ex parte proceeding, and no problem with the pronunciation there, Cog. I don't blame anybody for not doing the Latin there correctly.
I'm struggling.
Now is probably not correct to like classical Latin. We're not speaking like we did in the Roman Empire or anything. But we say ex parte, that means essentially of their own recognizance, right? Rather than to ask by someone else to look at this, Nintendo said, hey, Japan just rejected something of all things. Maybe we should take a look at this. We think we maybe got the prior art wrong. If Nintendo didn't cite the proper prior art, Nintendo could get in trouble for that, but that's unlikely. And so this is an important step for the U.S. Trademark and Patent Office, at least saying we need to pay more close attention to games. What I would have people understand about this whole story is that probably occurs in the environment where there was a substantial amount of furor raised when places like Game Freak went out and said this patent was granted and it probably shouldn't have been. And I said very similar, and I was quoted in a couple of places on that particular topic as well. I think this is a good thing. I think as the article you were reading suggested, it's not over in any respect. The expectation should be if the USPTO decides to look at this again, they probably are doing it because they think that it was improperly granted. But until they actually make that determination, it still sits out there for right now. And Nintendo's going to get a chance to essentially tell them why it deserved to get this patent. And if they've got other prior art that they think applies, why that shouldn't apply to what they are doing in their offering. The other thing I would add to this entire story is that even in the article that you quoted, I think people get a little bit confused about what a specific patent does, and I don't blame them for that at all. This is one of the most technical areas of the law. When you go and apply for a patent, you are actually being very specific about what you are asking for protection. So you have to put out what we call claims that are going to be just dozens and dozens of things that all have to be there for patent protection to apply. And so it's not just kind of the notion of summoning a sub-character in the broad strokes, right? People came to me in my comments and DMs and said, well, doesn't this affect Yu-Gi-Oh? Doesn't this affect all these other things? It's like, no, the very specific implementation is a sub-character fighting for you in a 3D environment as done in this very specific kind of way with your user interface and the button presses. So it's a very specific kind of copying. Still probably shouldn't have been granted. I think it's good that the USPTO is looking at it. But when we talk about these topics, it's almost always never as bad as the most broad kind of highfalutin headline suggests that it is.
Got it. Okay, look, this is interesting to me because I'm trying to be as objective as I can, but at the same time, I do understand, I guess, Pocket Pair is, position and stuff like that. But I want to be respectful to Nintendo if, obviously they put in the proper channels, they did what they were supposed to do to have these protections. I mean, I know you can't predict the future, but I guess my question to you is that based on how litigation and stuff is going on now with the patent office, do you feel that Nintendo has a strong chance to uphold their position here? Or do you think that basically, as the kids say, who's winning? Who's early in the lead? How's it looking? Speak to us like we're 5, Hope.
Sure. This is a step back for Nintendo. Okay. That is, you can absolutely 100% take that to the bank. This is not a good day in the Nintendo offices when this happens. But that's not the end of the game playing at this point. And this is not a litigation. This is essentially, I don't know how to frame it best. This is going and writing a letter to the IRS and telling them that your taxes are fine and them saying, we're not sure that they are. And now we're going to have a lot of talks about it. Nobody likes that process, but it's not necessarily a lawsuit until they find fraud and really bad things happen as part of that. So Nintendo is going to get more bites at the apple here. They basically get to keep framing their argument for as long as the USPTO is willing to listen to them. And that can be a long time when you talk about big old corporations that are trying to protect something. So they're going to get to say, oh no, you think that's a problem. You think that's prior art to this, but this is why it's different. Look at this specific claim. Look at what we're actually saying here. This is why it works. As a matter of fact, I think even in Japan, when some of these were originally granted to Nintendo, you had some of the examiners say, doesn't this exist already? And and you'd have Nintendo issue letters and say, this is why it's different. This is why you should listen to us. And ultimately, the patent and trademark offices said, okay, we are bored of this, or you've worn us down, and we'll grant these for now, which is fine. This is kind of how it works in the world of patents and intellectual property protection in general. It's why we have lots of conversations about patent trolls and people that just kind of gum up the works for future developments of things.
Right.
And all of these things could be better. I'm not going to sit here on this show and tell you that these offices are all working perfectly. There are reforms that could be done all over the place. Most of these regs were written well before digital anything existed. So we are not on the bleeding edge of understanding here. This is the problem with the law in general, is that it's very slow to move. But asking to explain it on really baseline terms, Nintendo had to step back. Game's not over. If you were betting on this, you would say, I would probably bet against Nintendo right now, but it really depends on the patience level of the patent and trademark office, as well as what kind of letters they're getting behind the scenes, what kind of pressures they're getting from people with more power than you or I behind the scenes on these things, right? They do respond, like every human being in all of these offices, to social media, to pressures of all sorts of kinds. And a lot of people were calling out the USPTO as granting this in an unjust fashion. And they said, all right, now we're going to look at it again. By the time you get them to that threshold, it is an easier ask to get them to actually decline the patent. So the folks that are against this patent are winning right now, but it's not a fait accompli.
No, I love the way you explain that. It is something I'm interested in because obviously, you know, I guess my only position, I don't have too much of a dog in the fight. I do like the fact that Palworld came out trying to be competitive, but I do understand they were flying close to the sun on certain things, and I respect that. I think for me, it's just more so where I struggle is, you know, when something gets patented that, like you said, that kind of like the idea of it kind of already existed. So it's up to Nintendo to kind of prove why in this 3D space it's so specific. I guess my thing is in terms of innovation, because I do feel like, you know, in the video game space, you know, there's usually these baseline ideas that then future developers and publishers then iterate, right?
Yeah,
and that's what I want. You know what I'm saying? I look at like, again, I'm talking on a very simple level, but I thought something that was very cool was when I think it was WB or Monolith who created the Nemesis system, right? But like then they patented. So it's almost like, well, no one can use that and then like iterate upon that. And I do struggle with that sometimes kind of thing. So I am curious to see where this goes because I do feel that video games kind of look at each other and then iterate, and also ultimately that kind of makes a better game and a forward moving of the industry. And I'm worried about if we're patenting every little thing, especially if they're broad. Like I do get a little concerned about that, but it's been fun to watch.
I think that's entirely justified. I will say in defense of the entire patent framework that it's designed to be the opposite. That's not how it wound up, but the reason patents are public is so that the overall body politic can use those inventions and iterate upon them on their own inventions. You are supposed to be able to take something that already exists and come up with some new novel application, something that you add to it that's different, and take the Nemesis system and apply it to your cooking game in a way that you wouldn't have thought about if you were just playing Shadow of Mordor. And that's how it's supposed to work. The practicalities of it are when the WB owns a patent and they can tell that you based your design around that patented thing, then they are more inclined to say, well, litigation costs a lot of money and you're a little developer, so we're going to sue you over it and sucks to be you. And so it's the process isn't working like it's supposed to. The process is supposed to say, okay, yeah, go patent whatever you want. But if there's a real novel iteration of this thing, that is no longer infringing on your patent. And that really hasn't been the way that litigation has worked in any of these jurisdictions for a very long time, which is one of the reasons why these things need reform.
Got it. Now, much appreciate Hoeg breaking it down. We had to bring back Help Us Out Hoeg. We had to bring it out.
It's been a long time since I've heard that.
I got to take you back to your roots.
It's true.
No doubt. Let's get on to the next one. It's another interesting one I want to get your perspective on. Yeah, this is gamesindustry.biz, man. 72% of devs believe Steam has a monopoly on PC games. And yeah, the majority of the studios surveyed says that Steam accounts for 75% of their revenue, of overall revenue. And they said that they feel they have the monopoly on the games market. So according to a new white paper from PC distribution platform Rocky, that's ROKKY, it's titled The State of PC Games Distribution. The independent study, they conducted by Atomic Research, surveyed 306 industry executives across the UK and USA between May 18th and May 22nd. 70% of respondents were senior managers of the C-suite level, with 77% from studios with more than 50 employees. The study found that for the majority of studios, Steam accounts for over 75% of revenue. However, it is also noted that developers have started utilizing other platforms, including the Epic's Game Store and the Xbox PC Game Store. Almost half of those surveyed have distributed a title to both stores, while 10% have used GOG and 8% have used itch.io. So yeah, they said that the survey is dominated by larger companies with diverse portfolios. And then one other thing that they wanted to talk about in terms of developers highlighting the benefits of it being ease of use, price control, promotional support, and international reach. And yeah, they said that last thing was data showed that 80% of those surveyed expected to use alternative channels alongside Steam within 5 years. So I don't know if you got a chance to look at this, but this was interesting. I'm just curious, this whole context about, is Steam a monopoly? Where does Hoeg stand on this?
Well, you got me to defend the patent process. Let's get me to defend monopolies. All right. So, yeah, these are always very interesting to me because when I see survey results reported this way, I'm always interested in what the survey actually said. There are ways to frame these things out that are maybe not as accurate or truthful as they otherwise could be. What I see in a report like this is that a lot of game developers and publishers feel like presence on the Steam store is necessary for them to be viable and to succeed. That's not, strictly speaking, an economic monopoly. They are not. Nobody really believes that Steam is the only way to get your video game product into customer hands, right? A monopoly is the only seller on the block. Generally speaking, they don't really exist in any kind of intellectual framework in the digital space because you can just open up your own website and sell whatever it is that you want to sell. But on a practical level, certainly if you want to succeed in having a PC game position, you are almost certainly going to interact with Valve and Steam. So the other aspect of this that I think is the most interesting is usually when you see these reported on this way, it is to suggest that it's a bad thing that they are a monopoly, right? And one thing I would say is from a legal perspective, and I've said this in other places, monopolies are not illegal. As a matter of fact, the economic system of the United States encourages monopolies. We want you to become a monopoly. We want you to be a huge portion of the market if your product or service is what is meeting customer demands the best, right? And I think a lot of people that love Steam would tell you the reason that I love Steam is that they have the best storefront. They have the easiest library to understand. They have great comment sections that always give me good feedback. Whatever it is that these people love, there's also, of course, some stickiness there, which is, it's where my games are, Rick. I don't want to open another tab. That's crazy talk.
How dare us?
And so I do think that Valve and Steam have a very large position in the PC gaming market, predominantly because they provide a service that customers like. And do developers have to love the fact that they have to be involved with Steam in order to get to those customers? No, they don't have to love it. But just like with Apple versus Epic and Epic versus Google, there are notions that you get from these developers and publishers that I don't think are, strictly speaking, consumer friendly, strictly speaking, economically sound, which is to say, yes, you have to be on Apple if you want to have an app. You have to be on Google Play if you want to succeed on Android, and we can knock some of these walls down if we're Tim Sweeney and we have Fortnite behind us. But it doesn't mean that these particular platforms are strangling competition or otherwise harming consumer welfare. In fact, I'd argue that Steam is very advantageous to being a PC gamer, that you've got a company that seems to be taking the right steps to make their customer base happy. And sorry, developers, if that means that in order to get access to that customer base that is so happy, you have to give up 30% of your cut. That's just honestly the way it is. But that's reading into how these people are describing the situation. That's reading into the use of the term monopoly in this article, which is a long-winded way of saying, no, Steam's not a monopoly. Right. If they were, it isn't the worst thing in the world to be a monopoly as long as you aren't engaged in anti-competitive practices. I don't think anybody's accusing Steam of doing that right now. They've been pretty famously out there making sure that you could get keys to your games available on other platforms and do these various things that are very consumer friendly. I know I have no vested interest in the financial success of Valve or Steam, but I think we want to have companies that make people happy, make the most money, and get these outstanding market shares.
Oh, well said. I mean, too much to add on to it. Yeah, I thought it was interesting that developers were speaking out in this way, but I do agree on a base level. I don't consider them a monopoly. I just think obviously they have a lot of market share. There's other places you could go, right? And stuff like that. But yeah, just they made a great product that a lot of their base just has that comfort level for the PC community that they just want to purchase their games there, and that's a credit to what they've built. I guess for me, it's just one of those things where just like I do look at, what the other storefronts can do to actually compete to make their, storefronts more attractive, to users. Because I do empathize with developers on this. Being lost as far as the storefront pages in Steam, right? Because it's so big and it's like the de facto platform in a way where everyone's going. Like you can get lost in there, man.
Oh, no question.
And that's what I worry because there's so many gems, and me and you both kind of like those smaller indie gems. Like, how do you get seen in a level like that? I know Epic tried to be very aggressive with it, exclusive, games, and obviously Fortnite kind of powered their storefront in one way, and then obviously Xbox with Game Pass and stuff like that. So I'm just curious to see what they can do to be more competitive because, Steam does have that stranglehold on the market. But I agree with you. Ultimately, I don't consider it a monopoly. But I just thought it was interesting that devs were saying this. That threw me off. I was like, wow, that was really okay. We'll see what they do to, if they're going to try to open themselves up to more storefronts and stuff like that. And obviously, I don't know if you saw the news break where now, obviously Xbox, one of the ones that kind of, I would say pioneered, but, really prevalent with like Xbox Play Anywhere. You get a digital license here, and you get it also on PC. And I know some rumors have now come out that PlayStation is doing, something similar, kind of thing in terms of PC entitlement and stuff like that. There were some reports that came out. So I'm just curious to see what other storefronts do to try to combat. And I do like what GOG is doing in terms of, I believe it was like, me and Maddie was talking about like game preservation and things of that nature. They're making a lot of strides there. So, I'm curious to see how do you combat such a dominant player in the space kind of thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's interesting from the devs' perspective, which is where this article comes from, because I view the Epic Game Store dev alliance as falling apart primarily because of the developers / publishers. The Epic Game Store pitch from a consumer welfare standpoint was Steam takes 30%, we're only going to take 12%. And what happened was that developers didn't really trickle that down to consumers at all. That they were making 18% more, but they were going to sell it at the same price in both stores. It's like, great devs, we want to support you. But if you are really concerned that it's mandatory to operate through the Steam environment, then you should be trying to show why Epic is going to be available for lower prices. Because that's ultimately consumers care about the quality of the goods and they care about the price that they got the goods at. Like, we are hardcore on topics like this, Cog, but honestly, you want as a consumer to not have to think about the businesses that are aligned around all these various things. Who owns the platform? How much are they making? What's the split with the developer? What does the developer have to pay up to the publisher? It's like, guys, I assume you're going to figure this out. I assume you're going to take this $60. You're going to see where it should go, and you all are going to be happy with it at the end of the day. I want to support you. I've always wanted to support video games. It's my hobby. I want to spend money on you all, but they're your contracts. I can't fix them for you. And when you say, I'm going to sell it for $50 or $60 on Steam, oh no, I took an Epic bag of cash and they're only taking 12% off the top, but it's still $60 or $50 or whatever it was going to be at Steam, then I say, well, this isn't working out properly. And I think Epic was really burned on that score by developers just not moving that number around at all, which also hurt them in their Epic versus Apple and Google versus Epic argument, which is they were trying to say that their 12% was harming the anti-competitive nature of the 30% at these other platforms. And that never really bore fruit because the consumers weren't seeing any benefit to their 12%.
Well said. So we're gonna see what happens as with the other storefronts in the future. We'll move on. This one I thought was also interesting. What's your feedback? Yeah, because this is from Ampere. Consumers spend twice as much on video game remakes than remasters. With global spending on an average, the remake was more than twice the average of the remaster. And yeah, they just talked about this was from reached across from 2024 and 2025, attracted 72 million players across Xbox, PlayStation, and Steam, with consumers spending more, some 1.4 billion on premium for full games and microtransactions. So they talked about how 42 of these titles examined that spending on the average remake was more than twice of the average remaster at 2.2 times. And then they said, however, Ampere acknowledges that while data suggests remakes can rejuvenate classic IP and attract new audiences, they require substantially higher investment in development, marketing, and time. Remasters, by contrast, offer faster turnaround and lower costs, but generally deliver less engagement. There was one exception that they mentioned, and this was a big one, Elder Scrolls 4, the Oblivion Remastered, which reached a peak of 180 million in consumer spending, and 7 million monthly active users across PlayStation, Xbox, and Steam. And yeah, they said that Katie Holt, the analyst at Ampere, said that as games and IP development costs escalate, publishers are increasingly raiding their back catalogs for cost-effective remakes and remasters. Publishers deciding between a full remake versus a remaster have to balance franchise planning, investment risk, age of content, platform support, and more when choosing which route to take. So, remakes. Consumers, they're spending a lot of money on this, Hope. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know that I have a blanket thought on this question because I find myself evaluating every remake or remaster project individually when I see them pop up. And I also don't know. I have some questions about the kind of methodology of this study insofar as what they are classifying as a remake versus a remaster, because I know like Oblivion was labeled a remaster. In my head, as I played that, I really viewed that as more of a remake kind of experience.
I agree.
So is it just what the publishers are calling them, or is it some kind of other analysis of what they actually are? Without that, I think it's a little bit hard to react to. The other thing that jumps out at me is that remasters in general, as a concept, tend to be cheaper in my experience. So just in terms of the overall spending levels, I would anticipate them to be lower for remasters over remakes. But I think everything else that was said there is correct, right? Remakes are the bigger, heavier lift. Obviously, Square Enix is going to work for the better part of my adult life on Final Fantasy VII. So great, good for them. But everybody's not going to engage in that kind of project for their intellectual property. So I love some remakes. I don't love other remakes. I know that's super insightful. But like one of my favorite games of the year is the Trails in the Sky remake. And I don't know whether that's been a super beneficial product for Gung Ho and team to release or not. I just don't know. So what's a remake? What's a remaster? What do you decide to do with your properties? I prefer something that essentially evokes the feeling of the game as it originally existed. Over the Final Fantasy VII remakes of the world. And that's a project that I like a lot of, but I just didn't need it to be that thing versus Trails in the Sky is technically a remake. So we're evaluating it on the same kind of axis as Final Fantasy VII, but it's an entirely different kind of project. Like that's just a game that tries to take the original game and put it into 3D rather than Final Fantasy VII remake and like whatever they're doing.
We will revisit that thought. I know where you're going there. That's a discussion we've always had. It's funny. But you've been consistent. I have to respect you on that. No, look, I mean, I don't have too much to add to it. I just think it's one of these things that, remakes, when you see that level of care and polish put into an older IP, it seems to resonate with the core base that loved the original franchise, but then you get a chance to reintroduce it, right, to this new audience who, let's say this game has been lapsed for 10 plus years or stuff. And now they go, oh, wow, I've heard about this title, but now it's in, higher fidelity and modern sensibilities as far from a graphical standpoint. So I think, look, I get it. I think companies are going to do more of it. I have to be honest. Sometimes I do feel companies go to the well too much with it. And I do like the idea of original IP, original thought. But corporate cargo understand the risks involved with that.
Yeah,
And,
I mean, I've got enough Last of Us remakes or remasters, I guess, at this point. But yeah, I don't want to just put a blanket statement on that either way, because I liked the remaster of Days Gone, primarily because I haven't seen it in a while.
Yes.
And Last of Us just seems to always be in front of me. And I don't have a problem with that game or either of those games, but I'm good. I'm good with that now.
That's what me and you aligned here, because that was my only issue, with the Sony approach, specifically with Last of Us. I was just like, okay, I've seen you a lot now. And it sucks because there's a part of me that hates it as a gamer, but there's a part of me that get the corporate aspect and be like, okay, if they got the data that's showing, look how well this is selling still. We've remastered it 4 or 5 times. And now we've got, a transmedia rollout with a HBO show. It is hard for me to get mad completely at them, because from the business standpoint, I understand why they're doing it. I just, sometimes I feel like there's some level of creative bankruptcy, and I just would like to see different things from you, because I know what you're capable of, saying kind of thing.
We're about 2 minutes from the Pedro Pascal edition of Last of Us, right? Like, it's a digital product. They can put his face in.
You ain't lying. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I worry about when we go down. It's like a slippery slope for me, with stuff like this. But overall, look, I do like, you made the best point. I feel like if there has been, I don't know, let's say a figurative term of 5 years, there's been a while since we've seen this game, right? Then I'm okay with it. Like, yeah, you know what? Let's introduce it back, with an audience. When the windows are shorter and smaller, that's when I struggle a little bit. I'm like, okay.
I'm just upset that we only remaster the most popular stuff. There is so much crap in the backlogs that I would remaster and I would love to see again, right? I want to see Puppeteer again, Sony. Bring back Puppeteer. But like all of these games, we get Last of Us, sure. Like I remember every beat of that game, but I'll play it again. Why not? Mm-hmm. But for things like Trails in the Sky, the reason I like that project so much is that it was kind of trapped on a portable form factor in a defunct kind of game environment that led to a big series. And it's just such a great remake of that game that came out. But I also see everybody's point with like, I have a much deeper memory of a gaming history here. I had so many people talk to me about Final Fantasy Tactics from the perspective of somebody that had never played it before, that I was just super surprised. And that one I think is classified as a remake because it's got voice acting and whatnot.
Yes, which is excellent. Voice acting.
It is excellent.
Oh my God.
But I don't know, like in my head, that's the same game again, right? So that's more of a remaster. That's more of a tweak. I don't know how this is being categorized. And that's the only caveat I really have on the methodology here is it doesn't surprise me. The remake remaster conversation is going to continue to be a big one in the industry because there are all of these things that are out there that were once popular that could be popular again. Yeah. And gaming is really expensive now, not just for you and I to buy things from, but to make them on the back end for all these publishers. So if they've got some kind of design that has proved itself out at some point in the past, yeah, maybe we're not all playing games like we did in the 90s, but if it's somebody liked it some point before, I think they're going to take a hack at these things again.
Well said. Going to move on. We got a couple of more quick hitters before we get to the main news, which is, Battlefield 6 reportedly selling over 10 million copies, just according to Alinea Analytics. And it's been dominating. It's been dominated. And, obviously they came out with the, the new edition. I believe it's called RadSec or whatever.
Yeah, RedSec.
Yes, RedSec.
You want a battle royale with your friends in Battlefield.
Yeah, man. And then I thought it was interesting, though, part of this study from Alinea Analytics that they said, despite the 10 million copies, which is tremendous success, they said it may not be enough to overturn Call of Duty's overall market dominance. Yeah. And I just wanted to, see how you've been charting this kind of thing, with Battlefield and the success that's been going on. And, do you think that they, I would say, obviously, being a competitor in the space, but like, how do you feel with them kind of entering, especially from the, I think the rumors were that, hey, they're looking at annualizing as well, kind of coming out consistently to be a force with Call of Duty. How do you look at this whole Battlefield resurgence?
Well, this is an area of gaming that I don't feel the most competent to opine on as an expert, because I am not the one that is buying the annual release of Call of Duty. I'm not the one that's even buying the annual release of Madden or it's not FIFA anymore, is it? It's Electronic Arts Football Club, I think, or something like that. I'm not. I was always kind of taking a year off. I felt like you gave them more time to make changes to the games. So I think it's good that Electronic Arts and Battlefield seem to be, quote unquote, back. I think they took a little journey into the wilderness for a little while, but it was clear that this was essentially a dormant IP, because you could see even with the Star Wars version in Battlefront that there was a love of this kind of combined arms, big multiplayer experience. I don't think it's likely, at least not here in 2025, to take over for Call of Duty. I think the more, I'm going to use casual, and I say that with all the love in the world, because every casual that I mention here could kick my ass at Call of Duty. There's no question in my mind. But I think that Call of Duty as a kind of more infantry-based arena kind of shooter multiplayer is more approachable. Let's use approachable instead of casual. It's more approachable for more people. So it's harder for Battlefield that has all of these kind of class progression kind of concepts and very regimented notions that work a little bit better for me, the board game player, the strategy player, than Call of Duty, where I feel like I'm just dying instantly, not seeing around any corner, just constantly falling on the ground, trying to have fun with it, but it's a lot of death when I get out there on the streets in Call of Duty. But I think that's going to be a more popular framework, I think, for a good long time. So I think it's good overall for gaming, for Battlefield to be here. I think it's good for Electronic Arts, certainly, to have something in this genre work for them. But I do agree that it's not going to take over for Call of Duty just yet.
Yeah, and I agree with what I'm saying too. I just feel like, this is a good entry step, to threaten, to say, hey, we are here. I'm very proud of Vincent Pella and those guys in the sense of, he was kind of like designated to resurrect Battlefield from EA.
And he just delivers, doesn't he?
Oh, he's a bucket list interview for me because, I tend to like a lot of, the franchise he make. And I feel like from a studio standpoint, when he was at Respawn, he didn't miss. And then obviously he came from the Call of Duty days with Modern Warfare. He helped era in that Infinity Ward era. The Juggernaut. The Juggernaut. Like, that is what I betrayed. I betrayed Halo at that point because I remember that. And I didn't understand why. But now that I look back, it was the introduction of 60 frames per second multiplayer games, because I didn't understand why it felt so good. And then obviously the addictive carrot on the stick, the perks, and you're leveling up. And I'm like, man, this thing, I was like, I'm done with Halo. This is the new thing. When Call of Duty first came out and he jumped into the Modern Warfare series, and I realized who was behind it. It was Vincent Pella. So obviously I love this work, at Respawn and everything it seems that they touch, even though it's still like a 10-4-3, but that's another conversation for another day. But look, man, I am proud to see the success and the resurgence. Everyone that I hear and talk about it, because I'm like you, I'm kind of removed from the super competitive multiplayer days. I'm not really in that bag anymore, but I played the demo. I thought it was impressive. It runs well. The fidelity is great. And my only concern was that, okay, they're doing the multiple studio approach where it looks like we want to churn this thing out. Right. And then obviously we're doing a battle royale. So they are definitely establishing themselves as a future competitor. I agree. I didn't think that they would be able to do this in, 1 year, but they look like they're going to be around. And then obviously with EA situation, I feel like they're definitely focusing on the blockbuster stuff based on new ownership.
Yeah. We won't expect any combat to take place in Saudi Arabia anytime soon.
I would think not. Right. And that's another discussion, right? About what will be allowed in future games and what will not be. That's another discussion. But I do want to give them their flowers as far as just a great start and the positive feedback. So yeah, shout out to them, shout out to the teams, and we'll see how it goes for them.
Yeah, well, this is exactly what I'm talking about with respect to brand loyalty, right? And I know you see this on social media too, Cog, but it's like, yeah, we're talking about games here because we like games. So even if you love Call of Duty, you're the biggest Call of Duty fan in the history of the world, you should be enthused about another game that is awesome and that people are really connecting with and are enjoying. And I know it's not the easiest thing in the world, especially when you're getting yelled at from all sides on social media. But like, if you like games, I said something nice about Outer Worlds 2 this past week because I was enjoying it. And we'll get to that in a second. Yep. But like, I had a bunch of people come at me with like how dumb I am and how bad it is and all these things. It's like, okay, I presume that you're either following me or want to talk about this because you like gaming in general. So, like, I want to talk about what happened in your life that got you to tweet to me that you think that Outer Worlds 2 sucks because I said that I liked it. Like, don't we want to like games?
I love you right now, Hoeg.
We do, right? We want to like them, Cog.
I am so with you. And I guess this is my Gen X showing that I get so frustrated sometimes. That's why I keep my distance on social media sometimes, because you can make a simple comment like, yo, I am having fun doing blah, 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 or playing blah, blah, blah. Oh, that's terrible. Why'd you like that? And I'm like, whoa, like, what are we doing here? I think we got to get back to the idea of, one, this is a hobby. And if we love video games, and, I think more people don't express that they love it. I think people like the idea of the news of video games versus actually playing video games and enjoying them. And that's what I miss. I want us to get back to that. And I told you, I got a 10 tweet rule. I look at anybody who jumps on my timeline randomly, I look at their last 10 tweets. And if it's you not enjoying yourself, attacking other people, me and you have nothing to talk about, because your whole entire existence is to try to antagonize someone or just create drama. So for me, I'm old. I don't need that in my life right now. So I'm going to stick around people who actually enjoy video games, or if I know you, right? And then, you jump on my timeline. I actually have a personal relationship and they're like, hey, Cog, I didn't like it as much or whatever. Yeah, we can have a discussion, but just people are so disrespectful, bro. Like,
nobody has to agree with me. I have never demanded people agree with me, and I do not claim to be the final decider of what is good. I am not, and that's totally fine. But you just get really strange responses. And I actually probably should adopt your rule, Cog, because I tend to respond to people as if they are arguing in good faith. Like that's my weak spot here, is that I will assume until you prove otherwise that you are arguing from a place of good faith. And I could assume that differently if I went and checked about how your previous couple of interactions. And I don't take that step right now. So maybe I should.
Trust me, 10 tweet rule saves me every time. I just look, I'm like, oh, no, it's nothing for me and you. No response, nothing for me to talk about random avatar user X.
Oh, you're a hater. Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you do. Anyway, let's move on. Let's cover two more quick hitters. Yes, what? Again, we're just talking about, success and what's going on, man. Arc Raiders hits over 350,000 concurrent players on Steam, reveals a roadmap, and they were so successful initially, broke the servers for a short time, but then they were back up. But these are from the studio Embark, the creators of the finals. And yeah, Arc Raiders is taking the world by a storm, man. And, an extraction shooter in the space. I had just real for extra context. Shout out to my last word co-host Ibantis. He came on ILP recently because I have not got a chance to play it yet, and he was giving me a lot of feedback, and I was like, you don't play competitive PvP. You don't play extract. You are the definition, like Solve, of a single player experience game, and you are playing Arc Riders and you are enjoying it. He's like, I'm telling you, man, like they've got a great gameplay loop, and he does solo queue is what he was telling me. Oh, so I just wanted to give some feedback, to that for people who, don't seem to be traditional like PvPE or extraction shooter guys. They are enjoying it, and I just wanted to know if you've been tracking it. What's your thoughts on it? I know, I don't play these type of games at all either, but I am seeing a lot of positive response from the Arc Raiders community. So I just want to get your feedback on it.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I think it makes tremendous streamer content. So I'm seeing it all over my timeline, which is great marketing, because every time I see it, I say, that looks like it could be cool. And no, even though I have bought Battlefield 6 and I have played some Battlefield, I haven't bought this one yet, essentially because my co-hosts at the Bitcast, Ains and Travis, told me it was very much not a Hoeg game, which It's not, right? I'm a narrative first guy. Yeah. But I continue to be intrigued by it in the clips that I see, and I love their trailers. So I might actually fall off the wagon for this at some point. I don't know whether I will get my cash money bucks back out of it, because I tend to fall off these things a little faster than others. But I think it's cool to see a PvE game with a strong PvP element at the same time. I love the proximity chat clips I get to see. It's just not usually what gets me in the door without a strong story, and I have been told that it doesn't have much of a story. I wouldn't expect it in the context of a game like this, so that I don't view that as a big ding, other than it doesn't entice me to turn the game on. That's the only problem for me personally. Mm-hmm. But I am super enthused about any company coming out with something that just does gangbusters. We talked about Palworld earlier. That was amazing last year.
Yeah.
Ball Pit's been doing a big numbers in the indie space. Arc Raiders killing it is great. I think it probably was a part of the story of Marathon moving out of this slot. So I am super enthused about people having fun with something like this. I may pop in at some point in the future. I have heard good things about the solo queue, but I'm generally not bringing teammates to the party, and I'm told that pickup groups is not the way to play this if I were to pursue it.
No, well said. I think I'm in a similar boat. Like, Extraction is really not my bag, but I am intrigued. I am intrigued by this one. And I do see the clips. They do look fun. It's kind of giving me this, the machines have taken over, and, the humans pop up every once in a while to scavenge, come back out. And I do see the interactions, I feel, are very hilarious sometimes, and people actually sometimes befriend each other, all these extractions. I do understand the tension of getting to an extraction zone and trying to get out. I think that part is cool. And to your point with, obviously I'm a fan of Bungie, and, look, this is almost like a watershed. I would say watershed mode, but this is someone in your space who is really doing it well. And I think it kind of helps. It kind of helps for them to kind of sit back and take notes and seeing what is Arc Raiders doing, that it's so well that maybe there are things that they can adopt, and maybe they don't adopt it one for one, but just core gameplay tenets. I would like, for them to kind of take a look at this. I am curious though, because I was at Tokyo Game Show and I covered Tarkov, and they have I was able to interview one of the CEOs, Nikita, and that's like the OG, right, of Extraction. So I am curious because they have a November update, their 0.1. It's a huge update. I want to see what happens, because from my understanding, a lot of Tarkov players are playing Arc Raiders right now and having a ball. I want to see when the OG come outside. Do people, now does that pull away from their base a little bit, or does Arc Raiders stay alone? And then obviously with Marathon, I want to see whenever they come out, do they take the learnings and feedback from this game? So yeah, cool to see in the space, that this type of game. And you know what else surprised me, Hope? The $40 price point.
Yeah, go get it. I mean, I think we are seeing some more flexibility on those lower end price points. We saw Expedition 33 come out at 50, I think. We're seeing success with that. And I think people that are really analyzing the prices in the gaming industry can look at it and say, you can actually make more money if you can go and say, well, this is a value proposition for you. You're going to get tons of hours out of it. But the barrier to entry is lower, so we can get more people in. It's essentially a variation of the free-to-play model. Obviously, $40 is not free, but it's not $70. Right. And so I think we are going to see more people find the space, because there is that big gap between 0 and wherever games wind up, whether it's 70 or 80 in the immediate future, that there's a space for $40 and $50, which is justified, right? Not every game offers you the same kind of return on your investment, either in money or time. So there should be maybe a little bit more flexibility among these things, especially when folks don't have to deal with as much brick and mortar retail solution kind of things. Because some of these games that we see at lower prices are also digital only.
Yes.
And that can help some of these publishers and developers at the same time. So there's a lot of flexibility that we are going to continue to see in video games. I just saw an article or a tweet earlier today about a sale that was different between two customers. That was a man and his wife.
Dynamic pricing. I've been seeing
dynamic pricing that the customer can see, which is not what you really want from the corporate level, but hey, I'm not running your platforms, folks. Right. But yes, that is happening more and more often. We can expect to see that. This actually came to my attention because someone asked me whether it was legal. Yes, it's legal, as long as the dynamicness of the pricing is not just against protected classes. You can't just make the men pay more. You can't just make another protected class pay less, whatever it is that you might want to focus on. But outside of that, you can absolutely, as a corporation in America, at least, say this person is less likely to buy. We're gonna have to give them a little more sugar to get them in the door, and that's what's going to happen in more and more of these platforms going forward. I think that flexibility is good overall. It's going to feel a little icky in places, and some people are not going to do it right.
Yeah, it is interesting to see, how that is tracked versus habits and stuff like that. That gets into a space. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if it's not legal, I can't go too crazy on it. But I did see that, and I thought that's okay. Yeah, these price points are about to be played with, in the game space as we go on, and also what perceived value is and stuff like that. But yeah,
my history of buying video games, all of mine are going to be 100. Like the dynamic pricing is going to say Hoeg is a sucker. What can we get out of Hoeg?
Listen, I will say this: they get me. But like, if it's something I love, I'm getting the digital collectors. You see me, I got my Yotai. Like I will go all out. If I'm a lover of something, I will go all out on a collector's edition. So I'm bad with that. And I know the other thing I'm probably bad at is like, I know people hate it, but like the whole get it early a couple of days. Because I do feel this. I'll stand on my hill on this one. That is a self-control issue. No one's forcing you to buy the 5-day early plan early. They are preying on your FOMO, but you could wait. Kind of thing. But every once in a while, I was like, yeah, sometimes I'm like, I want this game now. I can't wait.
I retroactively wish I did it for Outer Worlds too. It was basically one of the only ones that I didn't do it for. And after having played it, I was like, oh, this is one I should have.
Yeah.
I could have used that 5 days. But yeah, no, I'm always of the opinion that that's actually one of the biggest value items you can give me in a deluxe edition. Like, I don't need a statue in my house. I don't need a bunch of other stuff. I do mostly need time. Yes. And so if you can give me that, I'm not going to resent it. I'm not going to buy it all the time. But I'm not joking. Dynamic pricing is going to see me. They're going to say Final Fantasy 17. That's $150 for you, Hoeg.
I love it. Oh man. Let's move on to the next one. This one's for me. Black Ops 7 specs been revealed, but ROG Ally X, Xbox Ally X support has been noted. So it's basically they gave all the PC specs, but then they said specifically that it's going to run on most Windows-based handhelds. Black Ops 7 ships fully tuned for supported PC handhelds, including the ROG Xbox Ally and the ROG Xbox Ally X. The developers enhanced UI legibility, scaled the game for smaller displays, optimized performance to deliver smooth gameplay without sacrificing image quality. With native control support, it's easy to drop in and start playing right away. Beanox is committed to handheld support and pushing quality, performance, and usability. Grab an Xbox Ally or your favorite supported handheld, hit start, and take your adventure anywhere. I want to jump in on this because this is super important to me. And obviously, as a person who, if you want to call me the beta tester of Xbox's future with this handheld, that is me, because I want them to have, a really premium experience. And one, I think this benefits the Windows handheld community and even Steam on a Linux standpoint, because if more developers are now customizing their experience for these handhelds, I think that bodes well as far as development and getting things like a Steam Deck verified and stuff like that. I want more of these games to be optimized. Obviously, I'm older. I like my fonts and my UI legibility to be at a nice, Hoeg, that's us.
I can't tell you how many times I turn it to large now, Cog.
Boy, I've become my dad. Like, it's funny when my younger cousins or my friends that are younger see me, they be like, Cog, why are your fonts so big, bro? I'm like, shut up. Don't worry about what I'm doing.
There's no reason to hurt my eyes if I don't have to.
Exactly. I'm immediately going to the accessibility feature, putting that up. But ultimately, my main thing is performance targets, optimizing it for smaller displays. And we talked about, a future where they're flirting with a hybrid future. You want these settings to be kind of baked in already, where the developers did the optimization for you or the settings for you, and it's ready to go. So, I am the target demographic. I am the guy that's traveling all over the place for conventions and stuff. I use my ROG Ally. To be honest, that helps me finish games. There's times where, there's games that I just didn't have the time or I'm reviewing, but I can, when I'm in, on a plane or whatever, I got all these hours to just kind of knock this stuff out. So yeah, I'm very excited to see this kind of stuff, and hopefully the support continues from developers, including, Xbox and their first party titles as well. But I don't know if you had anything else to add to this kind of support.
No, just that I think this is a great use by Microsoft of their keystone properties to show and set the standard for how games should be brought over to these systems, right? When you set this baseline level of expectation, that's useful for framing out what everybody else should be delivering. Microsoft doesn't own all these other companies, but they can help with their big keystone properties say, this is what a game that you've purchased operating on this system should look like. These are the things that you should get. These pre-baked concepts, these things that work best in this handheld environment. And I think Microsoft, with their publishing power now and their 34, 35 studios, can do that. Can say, this is what it looks like to operate on the hybrid Xbox, on the Rogue Xbox Ally X. And yeah, I know it's ROG or ROG. I still see Rogue. That's what I still pronounce it as. Feel free to send your comments correcting me. I know, I do. But I think it's useful for Microsoft to use things like Call of Duty for this purpose. To say, this is what a game on this system should do.
No doubt. 100% agree. All right. This last one of the news bits, because I gotta tease Hoeg a little bit. I'm very curious.
Sure,
about
hit
this.
me.
Yes, I gotta tease, because I think I know your stance, but I'm curious. So yeah, this one kind of came out as far as a collaboration event between Expedition 33 and Final Fantasy VII Remake in Paris. And shout out to Yamaguchi, game director of Final Fantasy VII Remake. And yeah, he kind of put up on socials that they hosted a fan event from both worlds, came together to share an inspiring moment. He had a chance to talk with his friend Guillaume, I believe it's director from Expedition. And actually, shout out to Maddie, who interviewed, I believe, Guillaume. It was a fantastic interview with Expedition 33. He said, one of the most exciting creators of this year. And here's the key point. That's all I'm going to ask him. He left deeply inspired after this talk. And now I don't know if you got a chance, the subsequent subtweet showed the actual artwork. And obviously, you got your Cloud and, your Eris, and obviously from the Expedition standpoint, Gustav and Mael and stuff like that with a lot of imagery. So, I know you have a lot of strong thoughts on both of these franchises.
This feels like a trap.
What is the
question, Cog?
I am definitely instigating and starting trouble. I will admit, I know how Hoeg feels about both of these titles. He has a very passionate take. How do you feel about the collaboration for both of these titles?
I mean, I think it's clear as day that Expedition 33 and Sandfall in general were inspired by my favorite series in video game history, Final Fantasy. And I think it's great to see them get to go and talk about their dreams with the folks that are currently responsible for the biggest Final Fantasy projects. So I don't have any objection to any of this at any level, other than I don't want to see either one of them become the other. I don't want to see Expedition 33 become Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I don't want to see Final Fantasy VII, whatever the last one calls, my current favorite in the clubhouse is Return, become Expedition 33. So I think it's great for JRPG fans to get all of these different alternatives. I personally, as Hoeg only, wish the Final Fantasy VII project were a little bit different.
Okay.
But with what it is and what it's going to be in its final version, I am happy that it is different from Expedition 33 and happy that it's different from Atlas and Metaphor and Persona and everything else. So I want them all to keep their own identities. I don't think that's at risk here. I think this is people that have made cool things talking about the cool things that they made. And I think that's great.
Okay. I do have a question because I still have to start more trouble with you.
Yes, I figured.
So, because you're the homie, you're my friend, right? And I know with Expedition 33, you have strong feelings. Not that you dislike the game. And
not even
like
a little.
Yeah, I know you don't. But I do have to ask, when the director of Final Fantasy VII, he was deeply inspired, there is a discussion that I've seen going around in some RPG circles. And I actually want to quote my boy Addict on this, where he's a huge Expedition 33 fan. That's like his game of the year. He loves it. But his concern is he actually disapproves with Final Fantasy VII's moving away from turn-based. So what say Hoeg, right, in terms of like, I believe the comments from Yamaguchi at one point was like the final part of the trilogy hasn't been decided as far as what systems they will use, right? So my question is, would Hoeg be opposed to Final Fantasy VII going back to turn-based routes for the final part of the trilogy, or should they stay consistent because they've already been consistent with with Rebirth and Remake?
I view the current hybrid system that they have in the Remake trilogy as the best of both worlds. I think this is the best as anybody has ever done in adapting what was the active time battle system in Final Fantasy as between it and the Devil May Cry action system of Final Fantasy 16. Like, I don't think either one of those is necessary. I think this Final Fantasy VII's version of this is the way forward. I personally view it as turn-based adjacent with their very aggressive use of cooldowns. So it hits all the right spots for me. You need to be strategically thinking about what powers you're going to use, all the things that I love about turn-based. So I don't think it needs to be Expedition 33. I will tell you also that when I saw those quotes from the Final Fantasy VII director, I really viewed it as we haven't settled on every aspect of how we're going to use the high wind and all the various things that we know would have to be in the third part of this game. I say game as it was in Final Fantasy VII. Obviously, this is its own third game. But hey, that's the project for you. But I don't view it as that we're going to take our battle system and make it something completely different. I don't think that would make sense for the series. I don't really think that's what it means to be deeply inspired. I think, as the current wardens of Final Fantasy, to have somebody like Sandfall that was so clearly themselves deeply inspired by what your history in this series is, to have that kind of fan feedback and have the success that they did and still be kind of very interested in what you are doing is inspiring. I can't speak as a creative director of a video game series, but I do know that when you have people like proteges or mentees come to you and say various things about what you learned from them or how they were inspired by you, that is itself inspiring and drives you to do more and better things in the future. I think that's what was trying to be conveyed. But we're 3 steps removed because we're at a convention or an event in a foreign country. It's being transmitted through social media and summarized that way in a different language, translated back to us in a different summary. So it's always a lot of interpretation for these things. But no, I'm not overly worried about Final Fantasy VII 3. I don't think it will become Expedition 33. I think there are worst possible things that it could choose to be. So if they just decided, hey, we're going to do full-on Gustav and Mael combat in Final Fantasy VII 3, I wouldn't love the choice, but I did like playing Expedition 33, so I'd figure out a way to deal with it.
Right. No, fair enough. No, I'm glad you clarified that. My thoughts are kind of similar. I mean, my thing is just like, these 2 games, they mean a lot to me. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Expedition 33, as you know. It is interesting to see, obviously, like you said, clearly Sandfall was inspired by them, and then obviously, these guys, see them and now, really respect their contribution to the games industry. I will give you credit though, Hoeg. I will say this is one thing that I know you get some pushback on a lot of Expedition 33 takes, but one thing I do agree with you that I think your concern is founded in the sense of, now that Expedition 33 has done what it's done, right? And I consider it almost like the Souls-like version of a turn-based in a way, so there's a concern for me that we know that the games industry could be a copycat league, so to speak. And I don't want people I agree with you this way. I don't want other developers to say, okay, this is what it has to be. And now we get nothing but this. And we do get to traditional turn-based as well. And I think we are getting that. I am seeing stuff as we will talk about what Obsidian's doing and stuff like that, but I do think that, it is something to be cognizant of. And what they did is special. We don't need everybody to do that. And I think that's the part that I do resonate with you on that. But I just wanted to bring this to your attention. I said, this going to be fun to talk about with her.
Yeah, no, it's 2 things that I get the most, commentary on my thoughts on social media is Final Fantasy VII and Expedition 33. So thank you for bringing those together for me, Cog.
Yes, I had to. I had to bring it full circle. See, I had my drama early in the show. You had your drama. We're talking through. You know me. I gotta mess with you a little bit. Anyway, so let's get to the main event, man. As far as what we're playing, and I think we are sharing playing the same games in Outer Worlds 2. Just wanted to know if you wanted to start with that or any other game you want to give credit to before we both discuss Outer Worlds 2.
Well, I have a small game I want to call out that I'm really enjoying, but I don't know whether you want to do that first or second. I will leave it to you.
Let's do that first. Let's call out the small game first.
All right. So this is a tiny indie game on Steam that I think is not quite as tiny anymore, that I have really been enjoying, called Slots and Daggers, that takes a very simple, almost Balatro-esque roguelike approach to dungeon delving, except that your battle system is a slot machine. So if you can imagine, Your basic gameplay is that you've got a big screen on your slot machine, and it's going to have a monster pop up, and it's going to do a certain amount of damage to you. And you're going to have that slot machine have 3 to 5 reels below it, and it's going to have a shield, or it's going to have a health spell, or it's going to have coins, or it's going to have a sword. And you are going to pick before your run what your reels are going to be as possibilities. And you're going to do these different things, like hit the monster, like give yourself shields. And there's going to be timing components that relate to critical hits for things like swords and bows and arrows. And so basically you're only ever hitting one button. You're just putting your mouse on the click for making the reel stop, or otherwise doing timing skill checks, what they call skill checks for your attacks. But you're going to try to build up till you can beat these monsters. And in a typical roguelike fashion, you're not going to be able to do so very early on. You're going to earn other reels that you can add on with different weapons that do different things, have poisons, have magics. But it's just a really, really kind of compelling meta progression with a simple gameplay loop that is really what I find so fascinating this year, really coming off of Balatro in my expectation, which is a game concept that is not difficult, matching poker hands, but with this progression of jokers and artifacts and things like that, that makes the game overall very interesting. So I really love Slots and Daggers. This is my next favorite iteration of this. I also played a bunch of Clover Pit, which is another game that people were excited about on Steam. And I like that one a lot too. But Slots and Daggers and Ball Pit are my favorite, like indie roguelike examinations of simple ideas with different meta progressions this year. And I wanted to call that out because I really, really love that game. Now let's talk about Outer Worlds 2, which was a game I was not excited about releasing.
Talk to me.
Yeah, so I didn't love Outer Worlds 1. I mean, that's my honest expectation. I really didn't love the writing. I found it to be a little bit too arch, a little bit too cartoonish. I believe I described the corporations in Outer Worlds 1 as having roughly the depth of Captain Planet villains. If you remember the old 90s cartoon.
Yes.
So the villains in Captain Planet was all for environmentalism and all this good stuff in the mid-1990s. The villains in Captain Planet were corporatists and bad guys that wanted to create pollution, not as a secondary characteristic of making some goods or services, but literally just wanted to pollute the planet. And Outer Worlds 1 had this kind of writing that was just beyond my ability to suspend disbelief. And so it really just hurt my ability to interact in that world. Didn't otherwise hate it. I am very much the target audience for kind of goofy science fiction. One of my favorite games of all time, if not my favorite game of all time, is Star Control 2, which I recommend to everybody, which was a game in which you took a spacecraft and tried to free the Earth from evil aliens that had enslaved it by going and visiting other comedic aliens around the entire galaxy. Please do check it out if you can. I think there's a new entry in that series coming out pretty soon. But Star Control 2, one of the best games ever made, really had a nice comedic tone. One of my favorite books of all time is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Outer Worlds just didn't hit that for me.
Okay.
Outer Worlds 2, having jumped in now, played it for about a week. I'm not super close to the end or anything like that, so I can't speak to the overall arc of the story. But from the off, took this more kind of sensible tone where the corporations are still crazy. Everybody's still insane. All the various different political factions are nuts, but framed it in a way that I think I could engage with better, as this is all crazy and nuts, and really caught that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy kind of wave for me. So that was the first most important barrier for my enjoyment of the series. They got that better arranged for my liking. And then you throw on that it's a much deeper RPG than the first one was. It's got a lot cooler skills and perk system. It's got a lot cooler loot. It's got factions that are really deeply involved with each other as part of the main premise of the plot. And I haven't been able to stop playing this. This has dominated my time. And I want to tell people about it because I was one of those that said Outer Worlds is not a winner. I didn't really love Avowed. I don't consider it a dud. I don't think it was a bad game. Just didn't connect with me that much. Outer Worlds 2 is it. I think, honestly, Outer Worlds 2 says to me, this is Obsidian's Fallout. This is Obsidian's keystone piece. I think they can make Outer Worlds their signature series. And I would not have said anything remotely like that as early as a week ago.
No, that's powerful. No, it's interesting to hear your perspective, especially as a person who didn't like Outer Worlds 1. Yeah, man, for me, I'm in the same boat. I probably, out of everybody in LSM, the person who likes Avowed the most. And only because, I recognize its flaws, but I just loved, we're going to talk about Pillars later, but, I'm not familiar with that universe. I just thought the setting, the background, it just spoke to me. And I was like, okay, I love what's going on here. I love the lore. But when it came down to where it fell apart towards the end, when it came down to pure RPG mechanics, I was like, damn, I didn't feel, the choices were as impactful as I would have liked. Whereas Outer Worlds 2, wow, like this is, like you said, but this is an RPG-ass RPG game.
Yeah, you're doing some damage.
Yeah, man, this is what I'm talking about. I think where it really resonated with me is when the floor system's starting to pop up. And don't get me wrong, the perks, the skills, all that's great. But I'm like, this game is analyzing every aspect of how I play and then say, hey, we noticed this, right? Yep. Based on this, we think, if you want to lean into this play style, you have the ability, but there's a caveat. If you do it, you may get some minuses here, again, sneaking around. One thing right now that I've done is they notice my leveling up. I'm very well, sometimes I'll put a little skill in science or hacking or speech. I'm doing a very high leadership build in terms of being able to compare, my companions have more health, do more damage and stuff like that. But also they noticed one time, they was like, hey, you don't lead your command. You throw your commands out there, they die a lot. We're going to give you this flaw that's like, hey, you can revive and then they'll have double health and do more damage because they go down so much, but at this other detriment, kind of thing. And I thought these things were interesting. I thought the dialogue as sometimes is laugh out loud funny. Like there are some characters.
I've chuckled.
Oh yeah, the voice acting for some of them is hilarious. As a person who likes Outer Worlds 1, as opposed to you, I will say that the Outer Worlds characters, there's two characters that really I feel like it's going to be hard for them to top it Outer Worlds 2 because I'm a huge Pavarti fan, as well as Vicar Max, who was like the fake deacon / evil reverend or whatever, morally gray reverend, I should just say, kind of thing. But like, don't get me wrong, I like the characters in Outer Worlds, the companions in Outer Worlds 2. I just feel like I haven't, I will say this, I don't want to spoil if you haven't got there, but there's a character that I've gotten from a faction, and I'm like, okay, this character's interesting. This character is very interesting, very deep. And I will say this, the way companions interact in Outer Worlds 2 is far superior than Outer Worlds 1. And how involved they were in their own allegiances and how they interject. And I love, sometimes when you have conversations with someone, an NPC, and you have the option to let the companion interject based on their allegiances and so on and so forth. I thought that was good. I'm probably I think I'm on the 4th zone right now. I think I'm getting close to the end. I think I have probably about 20 plus ish hours in it, but man, I am having a ball, and I'm already thinking about my second playthrough because there were some flaws that I did take that the game warned me to say, hey, we don't recommend you taking this one for your first experience. But it was so tempting because I was leading into the play style and stuff like that. But man, I am really enjoying it. And I'm probably doing like every side quest, every task, doing it. And I will say the gunplay really good.
It's strong. Yeah.
Strong, man. I'm really enjoying myself with that, and some of these science weapons and the gadgets and the things you can do with this see-through. Like, it's a lot.
Crazy loot is great.
Yes, the loot unique. And that's the thing that I feel Bethesda should learn from Obsidian. One thing I love about Avowed, one thing I love about Outer Worlds 2, they have a sense of unique loot and unique properties and making something feel powerful and funny and just hilarious. I've actually got into a melee build. Like, I found this like kind of like hammer that requires shotgun shells. And if I hit someone, it does shotgun blast damage and lets off an explosion. The creativity in some of these things are amazing. And yeah, I am loving it. I want to see where this goes. And yeah, man, so far, like, this is their New Vegas to me. This is them getting back to their hardcore sensibilities, and I've really been enjoying it. But yeah, that's been it for me for Outer Worlds, man. But do you know where you remember where you are, which planet you remember you are home?
Honestly, I just beat Paradise.
Okay, yeah, so I know where you are. So you about to go to the golden, or what you call, oh, it's about to heat up. It's about to heat up. You're gonna get some interesting characters there, I will just say.
Yeah, no, I'm early on. I have been triaging my game time amongst life events.
Yes.
But no, really thoroughly enjoying it. Love all the fake songs. The radio.
The radio.
The fake songs stick in my head.
Yes.
Like I was humming one the other day.
Yeah, when you get to another planet, there's one faction that you could tell the game is making a play on scientific based kind of religions. Hoeg, there is one song from that radio that is so hilarious. I caught myself singing. I was like, this is the funniest thing. And they're doing it in almost Gregorian type chants. And I'm like, this is the funniest thing ever. And then sometimes if you listen to the radio, you could get obscure quests activated just by listening sometimes and stuff like that. This is just really, really cool stuff, man. I am very proud of Obsidian with this one. I hope it does well. We're going to talk about them more in a minute. But yeah, I've been playing a ton of, and taking my time. I'm not rushing it.
Yeah.
I'm going to take my time when they just do the quest. But any other things you would add to Outer Worlds 2 before we move on?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I am also loving it. I love the world building with things like the radio. I love the world building with the companions that have their faction allegiances and will essentially tell you more about them without just being exposition dumps. They are well-written characters. I love, there's a lot of Avowed DNA or it's probably Obsidian DNA at this point. These two projects that share, there's a whole kind of platform and exploration component that we didn't see in the Bethesda version of these games or the BioWare version of these games. And I think that's really well implemented. So it always feels like a fun video gamey place to kind of be, to explore and to shoot aliens in. And like, it's just fun. I am constantly desiring to play it more, which is not every game, even when I admire or respect a game. Right. So this is one of my favorites of the year. And I saw earlier on my social media that the lead producer, the head of Warhorse, the guys that make Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, didn't love Outer Worlds 2.
Yeah.
And I mean, to each their own on these various things. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is 100% one of my favorite games of the year. I haven't decided yet whether it's my favorite game of the year, but just absolutely tremendous. Outer Worlds 2, I feel, does something different than that game was trying to do. So I don't know that it's fair to say they're directly in competition. Obviously, you have to when you say what's the best of the year. But I did want to point out that Outer Worlds 2 is doing a bunch of things that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 doesn't try to do, whether it's the radio or the companions. And I think each has a place in your RPG library. And I say that as somebody that basically plays all the RPGs. And this year has been very difficult for that because they've been inundating us with them. I have also been playing at the same time as I've been playing Outer Worlds 2, the Dragon Quest collection of 1 and 2.
Nice.
So just lots of great roles to play, lots of great stories to experience, people, if you're at all interested in them. But if you like science fiction comedy or you've never thought about even trying it, Outer Worlds 2 hits it out of the park, in my opinion. And I love, as you said, Cog, the way that the flaws talk about whether or not you should take them. I think there's a lot of interactions in Outer Worlds 2 that feel like the game is talking to you. One of my favorite little tiny bits is that when you start the game, Moonman comes out and comments on your story before you start, like you're at a play. And he's commenting at intermission about what you just saw. And it's just such a nice little touch. It's like he'll say something about the town you're in or the planet that you're on or the thing that you just did. And it's like, that's really cool. I've never seen that before. And similarly, the flaws come up and they're like, whoa, hombre, you seem to really like reloading your gun. And it's like, yep. I mean, this is something that my brother and I have made fun of each other for in these games, like reloading after the first 2 shots. Like, we want to be, you don't know what's around the corner.
What's going to happen, man?
You got time right now, reload.
Yes.
And the game pops up and is like, this is a lot. We're gonna hurt you for this. And also give you a little something if you want to just reload like a crazy person. It's like, that's cool. The game is watching. You feel like somebody's watching you play.
Yes.
And that's neat.
Yes. 100%. I think that is a cool enough differentiator from them, that I don't see from a lot of things. And yeah, like I said, the companions and stuff like that. But yeah, I've been loving it, man. The other game I can't talk about just yet. But next week I'll have more, hopefully be able to give more insight on something else I've been playing. And I think people will be pleasantly surprised with that one. But yeah, it's been pretty much it as far as games to play. Anything else you wanted to add, or you are good on this segment?
I mean, I think folks that know me know I could probably add a dozen games here. I did just want to point out that
Yes.
I've been really enjoying gaming this last couple of weeks. I've just felt like there's been something that I was really looking forward to playing on basically every platform, or at least every seat in my house where I go into these different platform environments. So I've been playing Dragon Quest on my Switch. I've been playing Outer Worlds 2 on my Xbox. I've been playing Dispatch on my PC.
Oh, I heard great things about that.
Yeah, I enjoy it quite a lot. It's not quite my humor vibe. I mean, humor is very, very subjective. Right. So that's one of the things Outer Worlds 2 has going against it, is that you might not have Hoeg's humor, and you might feel completely differently about the humor in Outer Worlds 2 than I do. Similarly with Dispatch, there's stuff that I don't love about the kind of overly twee millennial writing style that pops out in Dispatch, which is fine, to each their own. But I think it's a strong game, and I'm happy to see kind of the Telltale adventure game model reappear in all these various forms. I'm also, and I know we don't talk about these kinds of games a ton in these various spaces, I'm also invested in Europa Universalis 5, the latest entry in Paradox's grand strategy series. So if you ever wanted to essentially simulate every living person on Earth for 500 years between the Middle Ages and the Industrial Revolution, this is the game for you. But Europa Universalis is an old friend of mine. I love these types of games. I think people have heard me talk about Civilization, heard me talk about Ara, History Untold. I love strategy and grand plans and things like that. So this is one that I've enjoyed so far. It just came out this past week. So if you're familiar with this series at all, you haven't had enough time to really love that game yet. Like, runs are 60 hours a piece. People put thousands of hours in these games. So no, I have not, but so far so good. And I'm not the right person to tell you whether the balancing is tweaked off wrong by 0.1% anyway. So I'm enjoying it so far. It's out now, so now you know.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks for the heads up on this, man. Yeah, this is definitely a whole game. I can totally. I'm looking at it right now. I'm like, yeah, this is screams on. Shout out to very unique name. Europa Universalis. I like that. Salute, man. Thanks for putting some spotlight on that to the realm of the Dukes.
I'm here for some strategy gaming. I don't know what to tell you.
No doubt. All right, let's get to the news. And it seems that our good friends at Obsidian, which we've been talking about a lot, well, other words too, they are in the news here, man. So I wanted to talk about, obviously, the first part, which is Obsidian announcing from their Avowed account that a public beta for Pillars of Eternity turn-based mode is coming out November 5th. And again, we saw Josh Sawyer, saw a video, and just they had some improvements for fans who were enjoying it from I guess in turn-based mode in Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire. So this is for the OG, the original. So they said now it's going to have unbound turns. All turns are now influenced by characters' overall speed, improving the value of real time with pause attributes and mechanics. Smarter free actions like swapping weapons, drinking potions, enabling models, and now free actions. Faster pacing, combat lethality has been significantly increased for both enemies and players to keep battles tense and impactful. More flexibility. You can now choose from turn-based mode alongside difficulty when starting a new game and swap freely. So they said it's a public beta. Please expect bugs and adjustments, but they will roll out this beta for some time as they roll out updates to prepare for a full release. And then obviously the special message from Josh Sawyer, the game director, obviously from we last seen him during Pentiment days. You know what I'm saying? His thoughts on what turn-based mode meant for the Pillars of Eternity community and how this feedback shaped this update. So that was the first thing, and I want to get your thoughts on that, and then we'll combine with the second thing as far as the future Obsidian. But I want to start there because I have no connection other than Avowed. I have no connections to Pillars. So please hold this news. Tell us, are you excited? Are you not excited? Are you a Pillars fan? Yeah, what's your history with this franchise? Talk to me how important this is to you.
I think I would describe myself as a Pillars fan. I don't think I would say I'm a Pillars super fan or anything like that, but I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, that I did kickstart the Project Eternity back whatever year that was. If you don't know, Pillars of Eternity was a kickstarted project from before Obsidian was a Microsoft studio. So that was really exciting to me. I think it's probably a dozen years ago now at this point that I loved like the Baldur's Gate series, the originals. I like 3 too, but 3 is definitely much more the Larian Divinity model of gameplay. And the original Baldur's Gates were that real time with pause, isometric character portraits kind of gameplay. And Pillars of Eternity essentially promised to be a very similar kind of game. I wound up enjoying Pillars of Eternity quite a lot, but it was clear that it was Obsidian stretching their legs a little bit with how deep and almost Byzantine they could make their lore. Like nested tooltips on nested tooltips to explain their gods and hierarchies and pantheons and everything else. So Pillars was always from the start a little bit unapproachable by design. And so my favorite of the series is actually Deadfire. Folks that follow me a lot know I love pirates in basically all kinds of media. And so Deadfire really features that pirate action a lot more than the first one. I'd actually expected Avowed to be more piratey and nautical than it wound up being. And so that's one of the reasons why I was a little bit not as excited about Avowed when I finally got a chance to play it. But Pillars of Eternity is a strong series. And I think more impressively for this kind of announcement is that Obsidian still has it on their radar that they're even making these kinds of structural improvements to a decade-old game. So I think it shows that they think Pillars of Eternity as a universe is important to their studio overall. I think getting Microsoft to fund Avowed also shows that they have that kind of faith in the project. I don't know that I'm as convinced about that. I think it's a little bit harder for folks to kind of get into than Dungeons and Dragons. And Dungeons and Dragons has a lot of advantages of just kind of pop culture osmosis at this point, understanding certain aspects of it. They tried to build this whole mythology up themselves. I think it's a good mythology, but it does create this kind of barrier to entry. And maybe Avowed is the gateway drug for that for them, because they had all those kind of nested tooltips even in that game to kind of walk you through what was happening. So I think it's great. I think it's great news. I think Obsidian is one of the stories of games in 2025. They released 2 major games in Avowed and Outer Worlds 2. And whether you think that they aren't as major as something like Starfield or a Bethesda game because they are a bit smaller in scope and they have a more kind of directed focus as to how you're supposed to play them, that's up to you. But in my opinion, especially Outer Worlds 2 is as strong as this game type can be from my experience. And the fact that they got 2 out at the same time while also delivering a early access version of Grounded 2 is just awesome. Obsidian's killing it. And I was not on board the Obsidian train before Outer Worlds 2. Like, I thought a lot of people really loved them. I was impressed that they were getting 2 big games out. But it's not as impressive if you don't like one of them a lot, obviously. So that really helped them in my eyes there. But I think it's really cool to see a company say, this game that's a decade old, we know that this isn't going to drive a huge amount of people to it, but we're going to continue to tweak it. We're going to continue to improve it. That might speak to them going back to that isometric RPG style for a future entry of some kind, that they're still figuring out what they want their systems to be. Either way, I don't think it's going to make me play Pillars of Eternity 1 again anytime soon, but I think it's good that Obsidian is interested enough in making the user experience for even their old games as positive as possible.
That's well said. I mean, I think it's interesting, like, because so being that you're the Deadfire guy, let me ask you a follow-up question. Do you think, like, will them introducing this turn-based mode, will this get you interested in playing Pillars 1, or you actually like the traditional, which is more of a real-time strategy kind of a gameplay?
Well, I mean, it's real time with pause. So if you think about this is like, it's pause and you direct everybody to do what you want them to do, and you unpause and they do the thing, and then you pause and you do it. It's essentially turn-based, but you control when the turns are. That's how these games basically always were, and they were designed to emulate how a Dungeons and Dragons party would operate. That the Dungeon Master stops things and says, "What do you want to do now?"
Got it.
I want to sneak through that bush and hit him with a knife. or whatever it is that you're going to do. And that's what real time with pause really emulated very well.
Got it.
So I think it's neat to have a turn-based mode. I always worry when things aren't designed for things to begin with, whether you can retrofit these things properly, but I think it's cool that they're trying. So no, I don't think I'm going back to Pillars of Eternity 1 anytime soon. A lot of that is I got just ridiculous hours of games that I'm really enjoying to still play. I have so many good experiences this year, and a lot of those experiences were not finished. So I'm just, we talk about backlogs. Backlogs have never bothered me, but there's games that I'm in the middle of that I want to finish that I just don't have the time for even now.
No, I'm the same with you. I call them the half-eaten sandwiches.
And part of my psyche, like part of the way I'm wired is to like to leave a bite of the sandwich left. Like I don't love to roll credits on things. I like to think, oh, there's a whole universe of possibilities there between me and the ending of some of these things. I know that about myself. So that's why some of these things don't get finished. But I know I have all that good gaming to still get to before going back to a game that I did beat a decade ago. No,
I hear you. This is intriguing to me because I think I'm the target demographic because, again, I'm the person that really Avowed really resonated. I just love the universe. I just like, wow, this is really cool. And what I like that Avowed did even more so than Outer Worlds 2 is their glossary. They understood that this universe was extremely complex, the gods, the systems, and I'm sitting there like, what's Sapodol and what's this? And I'm sitting there like going into their glossary of terminologies and verbiage. And I'm like, wow, this is a very complex universe. But I love that they respected me, that I knew nothing. And they had a glossary to help me out in game, in conversation. Right. And to me, it beckoned back to us being Mass Effect fans with the codex. It was like having a codex right on the fly that I could, pull from. And I thought that was cool. And I love the characters and stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, this is based in the Pillars universe, which I knew nothing about. I was like, this is kind of cool. This is, and when I see turn-based, they've already got me home. Like that is, if I am Lord turn-based, like you put turn-based on something and you add that level of depth and strategy. And now you're telling me there's aspects of almost like a Dungeons and Dragons dungeon master kind of thing. Like as a person who now has been flirting with the Baldur's Gates and flirting, with D&D on a small scale, right? I love the depth of that. So I'm like, hey, I might be interested, but I wanted to go deeper with this because there's a part of me that's like, okay, Deadfire, which you played, obviously they put a mode like this. They had a mode like this. So was that from the beginning with Deadfire? They had like a turn-based mode, or was it added? That was just my question to you.
I believe so. This is actually, you're getting into my memory banks here, which is to say I played Deadfire probably a decade ago too. I don't know quite when that came out.
No, it's all good.
But yeah, I think I probably played them both with real time with pause. So I wouldn't, this is not directed at me anyway, because that's the way I prefer to play these types of games.
Got it.
So in answer, I don't know.
Got it. No, that's fair. That's fair. I think for me, it was just like, again, as a person who now, who loves turn-based, and now you've seen the resurgence of turn-based, I thought it was interesting for them to now say, okay, we want to do this. And let's be real, like you said earlier, like Obsidian's output this year has been insane. Right. Obviously we talked about Avowed. We talked about Outer Worlds 2, which is crushing it right now, and Grounded, which became my like love affair, something that I thought I would not like. And now I absolutely love, this game and making me enjoy a survival genre that I thought is done extremely well. So I was like, okay, they're kind of done. They've maximized everything this year. But my curiosity, and me and Maddie had this discussion, is what is Josh Sawyer doing? Right. What are they cooking up for the future? We know that they have expounded themselves and they deserve a break. Shout out to all the comms guys and all. You guys deserve a well-earned vacation from output. But I was always curious about the roadmap, and to see Josh come outside on this, and I want to know if you agree with me is that to me, if you're flirting with this on Pillars 1, I either think you want the Pillars franchise to be much bigger than what it is, right? Or you want to revisit it, right? So maybe you're setting up a future pillar. Maybe I wouldn't be mad if you set up another Avowed. I feel Avowed from a foundational level deserves a sequel to get all the Outer Worlds things that we love in Outer Worlds into Avowed and really complete the incomplete, RPG, so to speak.
Hey, I said I didn't like Outer Worlds 1, and Outer Worlds 2 is one of my favorites of the year. Avowed starts out at a better place for me than Outer Worlds 1. So if you give me Avowed 2 that does a similar jump, I'm right there with you. Absolutely.
I want to get back into that universe so bad. So it's like, if you do that, that's another possibility. Now, I do know Avowed's development cycle, once we found out the news, was a bit troubled. It came from like a cooperative game. And one point, they thought there was going to be a Skyrim. And then they said, no, we're going to go back to our sensibilities, which we're going to talk about that next too. But, I just feel like they deserve, but whatever they decide to do, if it's in the Pillars universe, I think this is cool. And I'm excited to see what the next big project from them is, because I really love this studio. So I know it's a small thing, but I think it does. I'm hoping it sets up something for the future, whether again be a Pillars or a new Pillars that's turn-based, or that has that, what you call it, a real time with
time with pause. Yeah.
Right. Either one, to get guys like me into the universe, or if they say, hey, we've got more on the Avowed universe that things we want to do, I would love. I think that's super exciting. So that's for me. But
well, I can tell you, Eternity is definitely their lore, baby. Like the reason you see that glossary, the reason you see the excitement there is that it's their home cooked property. Outer Worlds 2 is as well. Mm-hmm. I think that they have a deep love of their serious property with Eternity. Now, as I also said with Pillars 1, I think it was a little bit unapproachable for a lot of. I'm saying that as somebody that loves to dive deep into world building.
Gotcha.
I think the Pillars universe could use a little smoothing out. So if they want to take Avowed and maybe even re-explore Pillars 1 and what they might be able to present that as to a new audience that isn't playing old Baldur's Gate games, that would be interesting too. But I have no doubt that there's some love for that world in the company, because it's theirs. And I think folks that don't know the history of Obsidian is they did a lot of other people's properties, right?
Yes.
Fallout New Vegas is Fallout, obviously. KOTOR 2 is Star Wars, and then it's KOTOR. Like, Obsidian has a history of not doing their own stuff.
Yeah.
Pillars and Outer Worlds and Grounded are their babies.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really cool to see them find their way. And I think Outer Worlds 2 also suggests to me that they've found what their model of game is. Like, to some extent, they were chasing BioWare for a little while.
Yes.
And then you could tell that Avowed was chasing Bethesda a little bit for a minute and then wasn't. And then Avowed became its own thing. And I think Outer Worlds 2 said, okay, if Avowed is our thing, then what does Outer Worlds look like? And Outer Worlds 2 says, all right, this is Avowed. We're going to do that kind of focused zone gameplay. And people, I think, oversell how small these zones are. They're pretty big.
They're big, yeah.
But they're not Bethesda games. And so I think Obsidian is carving out this place for itself, which is really cool, with this environmental traversal and these huge colorful environments and the companions of a BioWare game. On top of all that, the faction questing of Fallout New Vegas. Like, they're just finding this game type that I don't think existed before they figured this out this year in 2025. So I that's the coolest thing that I can see in games, is when somebody figures something out that I think is clearly going to be a foundational pillar of genre conventions for the future. Like, we're watching a new type of game built on the bones of other types of games, which is what we talked about earlier in the show, is how development works. But it's a new thing at the end of the day. And the Obsidian game, I'm all in for.
Yeah, I love it. I think, especially in a world where, let's be honest, there's a lot of studio pressure. And as far as like establishing who they are and what the franchises that they deem, the most important to them. And I think that comes down to that identity. And it's clear as day to me that Pillars is something that means a lot to them. And I would, whatever direction they go, I would love to see what's next for the Pillars universe. But you made some good points in reference to identity and them figuring out and iterating upon others' game. And this is the other main event part of this topic that I wanted to talk about. And this is shout out to, I believe, the Game Business. It was he had an interview, Christopher Dring, and he had two Obsidian members on, the VP of Operations, Marcus Morgan, who I got a chance to interview. Very cool guy. I really interviewed him during the Grounded 2 He had a lot of these things to say there. And then they had
Nice.
the VP of production, Justin Birch. So he talks about Outer Worlds 2 in the future. He has some key comments that I want to read. Let me read it for a little bit. So we don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we have one bad project and the studio goes away. That was the one that was kind of clipped. But it was a bigger discussion. So it says now that they obviously had the backing of Microsoft, was there any consideration about Obsidian going bigger with its projects? So Marcus kind of says, in full transparency, the journey around Outer Worlds 2 and Avowed put our approach to the test quite a bit. There was a little bit of self-doubt or self-questioning of should we be chasing these aspects of AAA. As we went through the journey, the lesson that we learned was stay true to our roots and keep building the games we make as opposed to chasing after others. We are always inspired by all of the RPGs that exist, but we also have our own style of RPG. When I look at Larian's RPGs, Bethesda, CD Projekt Red, they are compared, but they're all very different. We worked on Neverwinter Nights. We worked on Fallout. So I can't help but somewhat that we are trying to just be like that. Our goal with the Outer Worlds and Avowed is to more clearly define what it is to be Obsidian as a standalone entity, as opposed to chasing after what already exists. So they said the talks of Obsidian being conservative and iterative perhaps downplay the ambition of the Outer Worlds 2, which released last week. The first game sold 5 million. And then Birch says, yes, they do want the Outer Worlds to be big, but they said, here's the key thing that I think is kind of the quotes going viral. We don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we had one bad project and the studio goes away. All this ties into what do we want the game to do? What is an Obsidian game? And if we're going to make a huge bet on the Outer Worlds 2, we want to make sure we feel strongly about that from day one. They said they actually waited a while to show Xbox the game because we knew that it was going to be something that was special. So when we had something great to show, we sat everyone down and said, hey, check out what we're doing. And then we blew them away. When you look at the industry now, we've seen things that used to be niche explode into mega games. They talk about Souls, Baldur's Gate 3, and so on and so forth. And then he said that's where they want to remain focused. And then finally, he said, even with our marketing campaigns backed by celebrity spokespeople, hopefully you'll still see a lovable jank to all of that, which speaks to the core of what we want to reach. It's not our goal to go full-blown AAA. Not that I have anything to say about that, but we want to be Obsidian, and hopefully Obsidian can become bigger and better with each iteration. So there's a lot to digest here, kind of some things that we were talking about identity. What do you extrapolate from these comments from Marcus Morgan and Justin from Obsidian?
Well, on the one hand, I extrapolate that they have been coached in some corporate speak,
yes.
Which is fine. That's what the coaching is for. They're a Microsoft company. I get that. But they have definitely been coached a little bit as to how to respond to these kinds of questions. I think that's basically a mirror image of what I thought I saw in Outer Worlds 2 and Avowed, which is this kind of framing out of a new game type, what we are going to be. I think they're probably underselling a little bit about whether or not this is full-blown AAA. It's not like you have to be a Bethesda game to be AAA. There are different types of games that can be AAA. I view Outer Worlds as a AAA game. And so, yeah, it's not the same scope as somebody that's procedurally generating 1,000 moons or whatever. But I don't think you have to be to deliver that great experience. I would view a lot of games that are not necessarily the top end of Assassin's Creed or anything like that as essentially a AAA experience. I don't know that the labeling makes a ton of sense from the consumer perspective in a lot of ways. But I think they're on the right path. And I think certainly they're underselling the notion of, getting these two major games out in 1 year as testing their approach quite a bit. I think a lot of companies would not have even remotely tried this timing for these things because honestly, if anything goes wrong on either of the pipelines, you wind up culling resources from the project that's working and you get into all sorts of bits of trouble. I mean, we see right now with one of my favorite studios, Remedy Entertainment, that they're having a lot of trouble right now because they put these resources into their co-op shooter, Firebreak, and it wound up really hurting their asset base. Their CEO wound up resigning. There's a whole bunch of things happening there. And you can see why Obsidian doesn't want to be in that boat. So they're trying to work on a more, let's call it mechanical production line type framework for making games. And that's what a lot of these studios are trying to do. But very few of them are as successful at that project as Obsidian has been in 2025. So they have a lot to be very, very proud of. I'd actually forgotten that Outer Worlds 2 had a commercial series with Sonic the Hedgehog or Dewey the Duck in Ben Schwartz.
Yes.
And so I agree that there is actually some kind of momentum behind Outer Worlds 2 as this is a big thing. We want it to be big. This is Obsidian and Microsoft trying to put their flag in the ground. I think earlier we had a comment that suggested that Outer Worlds 2 wasn't being very successful because of the Steam numbers. Right. I don't honestly think we can know that right now. My sincerest hope is that it does prove to be successful, both for Obsidian and myself, because I want games that I really like to be successful so I can get more of them in the future. I'm selfish that way. But I don't know that we can honestly know. Game Pass really throws that calculation of Steam transparency out the window in a lot of ways. But I think they hit the nail on the head. I think this is what they were aimed at. I think the quote seems sincere to me, even if it's got some corporate language around it. And I am very excited about what Obsidian does in the future now.
Yeah, it is interesting because I'm torn, because there's one aspect of me that loves the fact that they know who they are. Right. And, you know, this to me came back again. I'm going to keep mentioning Avowed, but I remember when Avowed was first announced, it was kind of, at least the perception may not have come from Obsidian themselves, but the perception was like, oh, this is going to be their Skyrim.
Yep, baby Skyrim.
Right. Like, so I remember the initial trailer was kind of dark. It seemed more Skyrim-y kind of thing. And then obviously some people who disagreed with the direction change felt it was a little bit more colorful, a little bit more lighter. And it went away from this huge open world thing that they thought they were going to get, as opposed to these, you know, hubs and these zones, so to speak, which I prefer, to be honest. And I still think they're big, you know, but it's clearly not, like you said, you know, a Starfield with 1,000 moons or Elder Scrolls where it's just, you know, you go over the horizon and everything's connected and it's all seamless and so on and so forth. But I like that because I felt like at the end of the day, there's a density to their worlds. And I feel like, you know, more time impactful choices can affect regions and stuff like that, like we see in Outer Worlds 2 and stuff like that. So I kind of like that decision. You tell better stories. Maybe the scope is a little smaller, you know, and I don't know if that differentiates them from AAA. I think this is a big experience. But the thing that I think that hurt them was, unfortunately, they were the victim of a Microsoft gaming decision. And that came down with the $80. So when I saw that 80, I'm like, man, that studio didn't deserve that. You know, I felt like they became the face of the first $80 game. And it's already hard to fight uphill when you're not a blockbuster like a Mario Kart or a, you know what I'm saying, like a Last of Us, whoever it is that, you know, GTA could pull that, right? But like here's like mid-card Obsidian to me. Like they're the mid-card fighter that punches above their weight, running with the title of 80, not at their own fault, but Microsoft's fault. And I think that hurt them. So I am a little worried, Hoeg, about the pre-orders. I remember because they reversed this decision pretty quickly. Not Obsidian. Again, this is Microsoft doing this to Obsidian. This is not the fault of Obsidian. But it's just like when I felt like the damage may have been done. And then ultimately, I've had this discussion multiple times with Manny, but I really felt bad with them is that I'm of the mindset that at the Xbox showcase, they were not scheduled to be the showcase game. That's just, I am of the mindset because I felt coming into the year,
that was Fable's slot.
Yes, Fable was scheduled to have that slot. So I felt like, okay, Fable had that slot, and whoever made the call, whether it be Microsoft's marketing or Obsidian's marketing, said, hey, let's give our big Outer Worlds 2 coverage and blowout at the top of the year to IGN so they could do the IGN first look. And we know when you get an IGN first look, that's a huge look. This deep dive. So we started to learn a lot about Outer Worlds 2 before the showcase. Then the news comes out about Fable being delayed. And it's like, to me, it was almost like next man up. Okay, who's available? And then I almost felt like a little bit of overexposure in that sense. So it's like a lot of people, because let's be honest, what helped Starfield was we didn't know anything about it until we got to that direct. And then people go, oh, okay, this looks cool. I'm into it. Like, I like what I'm seeing here. Now I'm sold on it. But I felt like we saw so much of Outer Worlds 2. Then they got hit with the 80. And I'm like, okay, now they reverse it, and then obviously there's some other little cultural things I'm not going to get into as far as social media opinions on things and companions. And I don't play that game. But, I just felt it was like a bunch of factors played into, and I'm just hoping that Worlds 2 does well. But the final thing I'll say, and I'll give it back to you, is just that, I love what they're saying about, again, knowing who they are, being able to produce these type of games in a very, as far as the output standpoint, like they are extremely efficient and extremely consistent. And I'm just hoping that allows them in a world where Microsoft has, let's be honest, the rumors with the 30% profits and, Blockbuster and closing studios, that if anyone is allowed to survive, I don't want to hear about Obsidian talking about, we don't want to make one project and go away. Like, I don't even want that to be a thought with a studio like this. And maybe I'm over exaggerating, what I'm saying? But it was just one of those things that I feel like the way they do it seems to be a model for Xbox Game Studio, provided that, these games are profitable. So that's kind of where I'm at. I know I'm all over the place, but it was interesting to me that they mentioned that and how they view themselves. But I don't know if you wanted to add on to that.
No, only that I think you want production people to be thinking along the lines of risk and what risks we need the entity to take on and what we shouldn't be taking on. So I don't think that speaks necessarily to we're getting noises in our ears about Microsoft. Honestly, if I'm Microsoft, I'm looking at Obsidian as one of my cleanest, most easily defensible acquisitions. They've released critically acclaimed games in games like Pentiment and Grounded. They've released high AA, low AAA games in games like Avowed and Outer Worlds and Outer Worlds 2. I know Outer Worlds 1 was a little bit before the Microsoft acquisition.
Yeah.
But I think they are as safe as you can be in a Microsoft environment where it doesn't seem to make sense exactly who they're firing on any given day. So, I mean, I don't just rest on your laurels, Obsidian. I don't think you are. But it's dangerous out there. Take this. And
I like that.
No, it's the truth. And I think that you shouldn't take anything overly negative away from the quotes, because I just think that's how that role should be always thinking about their entity. And I think they just answered pretty honestly towards, we don't want to be in the position that we see Remedy is in. We don't want to be, heck, if Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't sell through the roof, like Larian sold their houses for that game.
Yeah.
Like if you looked at the way that they were handling their financials, yes, great, make the big bets, but probably you don't want to do that for your entire entity. And that's what this guy is saying, is we are trying to figure out a way where we can continue to deliver what we think are of as high quality goods without betting the company every quarter or every year.
No, well said. And I think, again, I don't know how much their games cost, but it just feels like they've got it down as far as how much they're going to invest. And then again, just getting things out in a timely fashion, the consistency. They've been the most consistent Xbox game studio out of everyone. To me, it's like I tell Maddie all the time, like, I'm yelling at Xbox leadership. You guys need to study them in all your studios from an output standpoint. Whatever this formula, this magic sauce that they have and these sub teams, like it is to be commended. So yeah, hopefully, like I said, I'm just overblowing the quote.
I think they feel like the safest to me. And I had forgotten some of the things that you mentioned over the course of the year. Cog, I tend to agree that felt like Fable's slot at the time.
Yeah.
And honestly, I just remembered that I don't think I wound up watching that direct because I wasn't interested at the time, because I didn't like Outer Worlds 1. So I don't know that I ever saw that. So I don't know that I got to the place of overexposure there. But you are right that they were the $80 bellwether, and they did have that direct after the E3 presentation. So I think the way I would read that, Cog, is almost the opposite. I think they have Microsoft's attention, not in the Eye of Sauron way, but almost in the Spotlight Halo way. Not Halo like their series, but Halo like an angel. And so I think if any team is well thought of internally, it's probably Obsidian. And I would expect that to continue as long as they have the project management kind of momentum that they do right now.
Absolutely. Shout out to Fergus and the team, and hoping things go well for them. So this is the final one, and this is this is very interesting. The timing of this is kind of interesting in terms of Xbox financials. So Xbox Q1 quarter sales down 29%. Third-party content experiences experienced better than expected performance. Shout out to gamesindustry.biz. Overall, Xbox gaming revenue fell 2%, offset by a 1% growth in Xbox content and services. So they talk about the revenue is 77.7 billion. This is for those three months, and then that's up 18% year on year. Net income 27.7 billion, up 12% year on year, and then the more personal computing, including Xbox revenue, 13.8 billion, up 4%. So overall the revenue for Microsoft first quarter was driven by its cloud and AI services, which rose 28% year on year. And they reiterated that again, but I wanted to get the comments. So the comments were, looking at hardware specifically, Microsoft reported a decrease of 29%, driven by a low volume of sales across its product range. And then these are statements from Microsoft CFO Amy Hood. We delivered a strong start to the fiscal year, exceeding expectations across revenue, income, and earnings. Continued strength in cloud reflects the gaming customer demand for a differentiated platform. Looking ahead, they expect revenue between 79 billion and 80 billion, representing a growth of between 14 and 16%. As for Xbox content and services, it predicts a revenue decline in the low to mid single digits due to there being less first-party titles compared to the same period last year. And he said it does not note that this may be particularly offset by growth in subscriptions. So obviously we know they've had the price hikes. We know they've had the Game Pass increase. So what are your thoughts from these numbers and these financials, Hoeg? What are you getting from this?
I have two primary thoughts. The first of which is, folks, don't go to your lawyers for numbers help. Now, I was an economics and mathematics major, but still, I don't exercise those muscles very often. I'm a word guy, not a numbers guy. So I tell my clients, even when they ask me to work with capitalization tables and things, that you basically always want to check your lawyer's work on these. Also, my second overall major note here is that Microsoft's too damn big, right? Like the way they cover their financials, they bucket all of Xbox and gaming into personal computing and all these things that obfuscate your ability to really make the kind of statements that a lot of people with their headlines and their social media and their YouTube videos want to make. So we can take the stuff that they actually say about things like hardware sales, and I think that dovetails with what we talked about in the commenters section of this episode, which is Xbox is clearly not as motivated by just driving the sale of plastic boxes under televisions. That is indicated both by the results of quarter one and by the comments, which are basically, hey, we want to be in cloud computing. We want to be in these other things. We want to sell you Game Pass subscriptions. And we truly believe that the customers want to be in all these various other things. So we don't care as much about the plastic box number going down. And you can believe them or not. I'm not even sure if Microsoft believes themselves on any given day on this stuff. But overall, Microsoft as an entity, I'm sure this is going to shock a lot of you, is going to continue. They've got a lot of cash. They're continuing to make a lot of cash. Your biggest competitor at Microsoft is not the failures of the hardware unit or the failure to sell specific plastic boxes. It is with whether or not the money, as seen by the Microsoft board of directors, is best used to continue to support video gaming or other endeavors. And everybody knows what I mean by that is artificial intelligence in 2025. That's what Microsoft is struggling with, is that return on investment concept. Where can our money do the most damage? Where can it be the most useful to us? And there's clearly an indication at the Microsoft board level that they view gaming as perhaps less advantageous than other things they could use their money for right this second. Mm-hmm. That's what's happening at Microsoft in a macro way. Mm-hmm. I'm not a fly in the boardroom. I can't tell you exactly what they're thinking on any of these things, but every actual action that they've taken, the layoffs we've seen in a couple of tranches this year, the various things we've heard about profit margin requests and things like that, suggest that Microsoft doesn't necessarily want all their free cash or other available resources going into gaming. That's what gives people pause right now. I think that's borne out in the financials that we can see. But I would caution everybody from analyzing a quarter one statement too terribly closely when it's already baked into one of the largest corporations in the world. It's very difficult to parse these things out for a professional CPA or a professional tax advisor or somebody that just deals with money. Right. And so if you're going to your favorite YouTube personality, just do me a favor, take it with a grain of salt when they tell you that the apocalypse is happening because of this one line in one of the Q1 reports. I see a lot of that out there, and I am not the expert to really expose the lies and tell you what's wrong about what things are being said. But I just caution everybody, and I do that with obviously the stuff that I do know, business and law. But that's what I see the most of in reports like this. And I don't think it's bad to check up on financial reports. I don't think it's bad to read reports in places like Game Industry Biz. But just know that these things already are premised around what we call accounting principles, which are notably not accounting rules. They're not accounting laws, because so many different corporations, so many different enterprises, endeavors in the world can be organized in so many different ways. The way accounting works is we have good faith principles that you have to report on. And when you're a company the size of Microsoft with one division that does the thing that you actually care about, you can hide a lot of balls in a lot of places. No pun intended.
No, that's good. That's good. That's a great breakdown of it. And look, I'm the same with you. Like, I don't intend to be any financial expert here. Selfishly, all I do care about is hardware from the standpoint of, console. The console is important to me. PC is not my preferred place to play. So initially, when I used to see these reports, I'm like, oh boy. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not surprised anymore. It's like, when I see the down 29%, it's not, oh my God, the doom and gloom and, this is it for them and that kind of energy. Look, like you said, they are a huge $1 trillion company, and they are going to figure out where to shell game or move things around. And from my understanding, content and services is what the metric that they wanted themselves to be kind of measured recently. That's what I used to hear from like Amy or Satya, these guys. And, look, I'm not going to sit to sugarcoat, like 1% is flat to me. When I look at that, I'm that's flat. That ain't saying nothing, crazy to me. But at the same time, when I look at the way they've been operating, it is no surprise when you raise the price of the console 2 separate times. You raise Game Pass, to what it is. The things that make your ecosystem, your hardware ecosystem unique, they seem to be, say, running away from, but they don't seem to, like, when you're that aggressive with those kind of decisions, to me, you're not drawing anyone to the hardware. And then, let's be honest, you can't really find it in retail. So this is what it signals to me. And again, I'm no expert. I'm just guessing. It signals to me you are already putting the kibosh on this generation, and you are ready to go to the next generation and whatever iteration that is, whether it's at the high premium boutique device like we talked about earlier or whatever. That is what it signals to me. It almost, in a way, it's not one-to-one, apples to apples, but it reminds me of when I had the OG Xbox, right? They were ready to go to 360 already. Like, okay, we're done. This was not a success from a financial standpoint. We got our learnings and we're ready in the 360 way. Now, where I think it differs is with the 360, that was, the Peter Moore era where they were really trying to compete in the console space.
Oh, they won that. Yeah.
Exactly. And I don't think that's what's happening with Xbox Madness at all. Right. So I want to be clear there, but it just signals with the series generation of consoles. Hey, we've done what we've done. Now this is our pivot. We're a third-party publisher that happens to have an off-ramp with a console. Choose to engage with it. All 35 million of you, if you choose to engage, we have something for you. But ultimately, we are going to be putting our major franchises like Halo on PlayStation and Gears and all these things everywhere. And the other thing that I think is interesting, and I don't know what you feel about this, is that I feel like half of the strategy isn't realized yet, because part of me is just like, we just talked about how successful Nintendo is, right? So I'm like, we haven't seen a lot of these major games go to Nintendo outside of like Indiana Jones.
Well, that Fallout announcement, I think, was really big.
Yes. And we do clarify, Fallout is what I consider a pillar franchise for the things that they're going to be focused on, especially if they're going to be cutting all these other smaller studios and laying people off. I think they're going to be prioritizing Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Gears, Halo, things of that nature. So it, to me, behooves them to get the Call of Duties and all these games onto the Nintendo Switch, which we see is having massive success. And yes, Realm, based on exclusives, I give credit where credit is due. They are.
I love my Switch too. I could not speak more highly about it.
Killing it. So I just, as a person who loves Xbox, and if they're going to adopt this strategy, that I'm like, I hope it works out for you. I would like you to get those games on the Nintendo Switch because that platform is really popping. Hopefully it does well there. But that's pretty much what I had to add on to it. I didn't have too much on it. But do you think that the Switch strategy is something that could help offset, as far as if them pivoting to a publisher is my final question for you on this subject? Oh,
yeah, definitely. They are going to be fully invested in the Nintendo Switch ecosystem. There is no question in my mind. I do have questions about the timing. I think my best guess, again, I'm not in the room on these things. My best guess is that the Switch 2 came in real hot and the development kits didn't go to places like Microsoft as quickly as some other partners that Nintendo was able to get them to. So I imagine that Microsoft wanted to be more on that kind of Capcom or even Ubisoft timing cadence with Nintendo. We see Outlaws on the Switch right now. We're seeing a lot of Capcom stuff ready to go early next year. So I think Microsoft's probably a beat behind that for this, but I anticipate that they are going to be fully invested in bringing over everything they think they can sell on the Switch. And I think that's great for them. I really do. But there's no question they are sprinting away from the hardware number being the top line number that they want to be graded on. There's no question in my mind on that.
100% agree. Final topic. We end it with something fun. I don't know if you've seen this. Have you seen this Xboxer commercial?
I have not.
You got to just
Xboxer. I get it.
Yeah. I look, man, I'll just jump in. I ain't like it. I don't know what it is, but it's two parts that frustrate me. One, it's cringy to me. It seems like the older guy is trying to be cool and hip. And it's like, I want them to get out of that. On the other hand, I will give them this, though, even though I cannot stand that this is an Xbox oversaturation with it. I have to admit, though, it does get the needle moving as far as people talking about it. Because people can't wait to tell somebody that something is an Xbox or something is not an Xbox. So
I'm pretty sure this podcast is an Xbox. Have we checked?
I don't know, is it? So it's just, I don't know. It was just, they had this old guy come out, if you didn't see it. He's kind of like, they're doing a play on Rocky. He's in the ring and he says he's an Xboxer. And here's my thing. And this is where I empathize with the hardcore Xbox fan.
I love a pun.
Exactly. But here's the thing, they are so aggressive with this strategy. I can see how a fan of this brand could be like, yo, you are being disrespectful to us with how aggressive you're calling us Xboxers, like X-washed. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm looking too deep into it. And then obviously he's got the ROG Ally, Xbox Ally X in his hand. This is an Xbox and that's an Xbox. And I'm just like, I get it. You're bowing this way, you're pivoting. But my thing is just like, can we be a little respectful to the base that got you there? I don't know. It just feels so in your face and then borderline corny. But that's just me. Maybe they have the metrics to say, Cog, look, the data shows this is getting tremendous traffic, people. But I know the dislike ratio ain't that high. I like the dislike ratio. I know that's in my favor. People are not caring. If you look at the comment sections on these things, they're going in on this stuff, Hoeg. So I just had to bring it to you. I thought it was funny. I don't know if you had any thoughts on this.
Oh, I just watched it while you were explaining what it was. But yeah, I have to be honest with you here, Cog. Mm-hmm. I may be too corporate brained or marketing brained, but this is an Xbox has never really bothered me or rubbed me the wrong way that I have seen it. I can vouch for the commenters and people being upset about it. So I know that is in fact happening. Mm-hmm. But from the corporate marketing perspective, I look at the whiteboard, I think about how this gets done. And it's like, we need to make sure that people know that they can play their games in different places because our console sales are going down. We saw that with just the numbers. We can guess at that from taking the exclusives away from the Xbox ecosystem. We know that people are reacting to that. But this is an Xbox, gets the point across in a very clear way, and it's repeated a lot. So that's what you're really looking for, is for people to understand that you can play Xbox games in other places. So I think they don't care about the hardcore being offended about this.
They don't care about none of that. You're right.
And I think this is kind of the other end of what I was describing earlier, which is that Microsoft has operated for a long time on the kind of we're your friends, believe in us, love us kind of brand parasocial relationship setting. And this is the harm you get from that. When you take a pivot this hard, you have the people that believed in you and don't. People, do not invest your souls. Don't invest your heart in corporations. I say that as someone that represents and helps corporations. They are not the evil that you would think from some corners of the internet, but also they are not your friends or family. They don't love you. They don't.
Good call out.
And so I think Microsoft is reaping what it's sown a little bit on that response. But as a guy that looks at this a little bit more from a 30,000 foot perspective, this hasn't bothered me at all. And I still play my Xbox. I still play my Outer Worlds 2. My Xbox has primarily been a Diablo 4 machine for me. But I'm sure I'm alone on that in terms of people that are only using the Xbox to play Diablo. But I think ultimately, I like the pun more than I care about the offense.
Got it.
It took me a second, Xboxer, but I like it. I like it.
Look, it's hilarious. I think that the only thing I will continue to give them smoke on, as a person who does believe in the vision of Xbox Play Anywhere, and being able to take my games where I want, dual entitlement. I think all that stuff is amazing. I think they are trend-setting and trailblazing in that respect. My thing is when you have a vision like that, I just want it to actually be implemented where there's no gaps. Obviously, I'm wearing a Shinobi shirt today. It's one of my favorite games of the year, The Art of Vengeance. Shout out to Lizard Cube.
Yeah, you're having a good year as a Shinobi fan.
I'm living my best life. I've been a year of the Ninja. I got Ninja Gaiden games. I'm living my best life. I got Ragebound, Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, and Ninja Gaiden 4, and a new Shinobi. I made it to 2025. I made it. So for me, the only thing that pains me is when I see a Ragebound and I see a Shinobi Art of Vengeance. I'm like, that needs to be on Xbox Play Anywhere. I can't play that on the ROG Ally. It doesn't show up on the thing. So where I will continually challenge them is, you need to have your vision completely executed before you're promoting it so, vastly. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's entirely fair.
Yeah, I don't want to see gaps in your vision. You know what I'm saying? So it's theoretical stuff of where you want it to go, as opposed to the actual practical application and the implementation of it. So that's pretty much all I got to get, because I think they're on the right track. Don't get me wrong. That's the future of gaming to me, being able to take my stuff. And you see, again, if the rumors are to be true, I just saw some stuff today in reference to PlayStation and them having dual entitlements. That's what frustrates me with PlayStation, because when we went to Japan, I'm like, man, I got to wait till I get all the way home to play Ghost of Yotai, because I can't play it on PC. There's no mobile device. You know what I mean? Like, that was the frustration. I think they announced that, that the cloud implementation is now going to be part of
the Portal.
Portal. Huge. Let's go. Because this is where Xbox is ahead of them. This is where Xbox, this is what I want to see from Sony, because I want the extension of my library. There's nothing cooler to me than, boom, Outer Worlds 2, I'm on my Xbox. I jump on the plane, Outer Worlds 2 on my ROG Xbox Ally X. I get to the destination, Outer Worlds 2 on my laptop, continuing my experience with my that is the future. I love the vision. I'm there. Just, I need the execution. I need the implementation. So that's pretty much, that's the only thing I'll give a little pushback. Yeah. But no,
I think that's entirely fair. It's not quite ready yet. I think that actually dovetails with your antiquated commentary from earlier, which is, that's the vision that they want to espouse, that exclusives are antiquated, but they aren't this second. And so it feels like a rush job. And this is an Xbox, makes sense. They're getting the message they want across, but it's not fully true just yet. They're jumping the gun on these things.
Exactly.
I think that's entirely fair.
Well said, man. Well, we made it. I appreciate you for holding me down in the realm. And again, send some love to Mr. Matty Plays, man. Obviously a little under the weather, my brethren. You know what I'm saying? But we got to hold along, man. And you know what? One of my favorite taglines for you? Reasonable minds can differ. And that's what I really take from you as far as the way you engage with people and stuff like that. But for those who don't know, where can I find people find you? What you got going on, sir?
Oh, sure. I mean, the best place to find me is on my YouTube channel at Hoeg Law. But for folks that haven't been following me or aren't already subscribed there, I have not been making new content for that channel for a little while as I go through a transition in my own personal and professional life to a new job that I started at the top of October. So there will be more content there as soon as I find my equilibrium and my sea legs. at my new job. I think that's likely to be mid-November at this point in time, but it's just a matter of making sure that I can do right by all the people that I have obligations to, my family, my job, and my channel. So I don't want to ever waste your time with content, but that's where I'm at. I've got Virtual Legality, I've got Hangouts and Headlines, and I launched a new show in September called Reasonable Minds Can Differ, where we talk about more controversial things, and I espouse specific positions open to the audience for debate, and really encouraging that, because I think that's how we grow, is to have those differences of opinion in a reasoned way. So that was a show I launched in September. I'm really excited about that. And please come check me out over there. Or if you just like to hear me complain about the Michigan Wolverines football team, I am also available on Twitter/X @HoegLaw, commenting about my football teams, both Lions and Wolverines alike, occasionally making me crazy on alternating weekends. But I'm right there.
I appreciate the fandom and the passion. See, there's some passion there. You know, you attaching yourself to a brand sometimes that can frustrate you.
You ever step back from that as a sports fan, though? It's like, okay, so why? It's you know, some people describe it as you're rooting for the laundry, especially in pro sports, right? Because they're just coming in on contracts and things. And it's like, but you are. And it's like, well, at this point, I've put in 40 plus years of watching the Lions be awful. They get to within a half hour of the Super Bowl, and of course, drop that in the second half of that game. But now I'm hooked. I need to see this thing through, and I'm not in charge, right? So it's worse in college, where every fall I tell my wife, it's like, all right, so we're gonna try not to let my mood be entirely set by the actions and mistakes of 17-year-olds, and yet. Here we are.
Here we are. No doubt, man. So shout out to you, Hoeg. I love the passion. And for those who made it to this far of the episode, we usually do a hashtag. So I'm thinking pillars, hashtag DD pillars. We're going to talk about pillars. We kind of talked about the pillars of Xbox, and obviously what Obsidian's doing as a pillar franchise. So I'm sticking with this theme of pillars. So if you got it this far, use hashtag DD pillars, and I'm at Hoeg Law, you know what I'm saying, on X, and obviously at Lord Cognito, and hit us up, DD pillars, that you got to the end of this episode. Again, send some love to the homie, Mr. Matty Plays, and that's all I got. Everybody take care of yourself, be well, and we will see you on the next episode of Defining Duke. Peace.
Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from the United States of America. The show is conceived by Matthew Mr. Matty Plays Schroeder and me, Colin Moriarty, and is written and produced by Matthew Schroeder. Matty's co-host is Barry Lord Cognito Eversley. Defining Duke's executive producer is Dustin Furman. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Defining Duke, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level on Patreon, and we're thankful for your kindness and generosity.